What's the big mystery of your childhood that you finally solved years later? I learned that the brown part of the bread doesn't contain the nutrients, it's just the more cooked outer layer. My brother lied to me to get me to eat crust when I was a kid. I have a memory from when I was 6 of an old man cracking jokes with the kids and spitting his dentures into his food. I thought it was hilarious and I knew this man was named Frank. Casually mentioned it to my grandmother. Turns out I was remembering my great-grandfather, and that day was my great-grandmother's funeral. My dad used to occasionally burst out with this one line of a song, "Said Barnacle Bill the Sailor." Only ever that line. When I was 6 or so, I asked him why, and he said it was an old drinking song that was absolutely filthy and I was too young to hear the rest of it. This continued once or twice a year until I was 18. I told him that I was an adult now and he could tell me the rest of the song. I distinctly remember him looking up from the newspaper, sighing and folding it, then going, "The truth is, I can never remember the rest of the song." And then he went right back to reading the newspaper. I mean, your dad wasn't wrong about it being filthy. Barnacle Bill is written in its entirety on Wikipedia. And let me tell you, it is too long and definitely not YouTube appropriate. Not the biggest mystery, but one day my friend was over in my house playing video games. My mum calls us over to her room to help flip the mattress over. So we did. We then went to another friend's house. My mum then calls that friend and says, "There were 2 $20 bills on top of the dresser. Did you take them?" I said no. I asked my friend and he said no as well. Then like 5 minutes later, my friend asks if we want to go to the toy store because he has $40 in 2 $20 bills. I say yes, and we go and he buys me a yo-yo or something. It took me years to finally realize that my friend stole from my family. The entire time I lived in my childhood home, my mum hid my Christmas presents in her secret hiding place. She made it sound mystical and mysterious. A few months ago, a while after I moved out, she finally told me what the secret hiding place actually was. The Christmas tree box in a cabinet in the garage. She'd replaced the Christmas tree with my presents when she put the tree up. Plain sight is always the best strategy. Something that a small part of your brain knows is filled with something else that you don't care about, and it continues to know that, even after the filling has been demonstrably removed in front of your eyes and decorated in the living room. Very cunning. Growing up, I always insisted that I liked the mashed potatoes at my grandma's house better than the ones my mum made. My grandma once told me it's because she uses a special recipe. I found out last year that my mum hand mashes her potatoes and my grandma just gets the Betty Crocker boxed crap. Her special recipe I was going to get when she dies is Betty frickin' Crocker. I remember being about 8 and in the car with my dad. I was in the front seat and we were driving somewhere and this song came on the radio. He cranked it and said something about it being the best guitar playing ever. He really jammed out, which was really uncharacteristic because he was usually so stoic. It was the only time I heard the song and he died before I could ever ask him what it was. When I asked around, nobody knew what the frick I was talking about or what song I was thinking of. So I had this melody in my head for years, but how do you look up a song that has no lyrics? So for years and years, this song stayed on the back burner of my brain. I was afraid to forget it. Somehow this story pops up when I'm like 26 or so, chatting with my husband, and we searched YouTube for best guitar songs. And after about 15 minutes, we find it. Cliffs of Dover was the song that I'd burned into my brain on repeat for 16 years. And now I jam out to it with my kids. When I was in elementary school, I always wondered what the teacher's staff room was like. It seemed so mysterious, and I remember trying to get a peek anytime I walked by and the door would open. Later I became a teacher and I can fully confirm that they're dull, often toxic spaces full of cranky teachers complaining about their students. When I was younger, like 4 or 5, my family had a pet turtle. One day the turtle went missing and my parents told me it had climbed the wall in our backyard and went to the creek behind our house. I, being a naive toddler child, did not question this logic. Fast forward to when I was 17 and driving with my mum in the car, we saw a tortoise crossing the street and I was suddenly thrown back to my memory of us having a pet turtle. I pulled over to save the tortoise and I was all like, "Oh my god, Mum, turtles can't climb walls! What happened to our turtle?" I came to find out it had burrowed a hole in our lawn and my dad hadn't noticed it until he had run it over with a lawnmower. Obviously, it was easier to pick up the pieces and tell your kid it climbed the wall than admit you murdered it with a lawnmower. In short, my parents lied to me about a pet going missing and I found out it was brutally murdered, by accident, by my father. I kind of have a weird reverse of the question, but I promise it's good. As a kid, my dad would call me from the other side of the house to bring him something to drink from the kitchen. He always drank from a straw, and about first grade I started getting annoyed at this, so I started poking a tiny hole in his straw as my own little vengeance. I didn't come clean about this until I was like 22 years old. The look on his face was priceless. It's like he instantly snapped back to then and knew exactly what I was talking about and just said, "Son of a witch, you didn't you?" He just thought we were buying cheap straws. Haha, I have a reverse one also. Mum used to make those Betty Crocker cakes, and I loved eating the batter. I'd eat so much of it that there would be barely any cake left. She was completely perplexed. Finally, she writes a long, angry email to Betty Crocker about what a farce their cake mix is, because it barely makes a cake big enough to eat. They apologized profusely and sent a bunch of free cake mix. I told her in my late 20s, and the look on her face. Oh. I actually solved a family mystery for my mum. I wasn't allowed to play console video games during the week all the way until I was 18, but some nights I'd really be craving it, so I would noiselessly creep through my house into the basement where I could play video games in peace. But once every 30 times or so, one of my parents would need something from the basement, and I'd quickly turn off the TV monitor, hide in the guest room, and pray that they didn't turn on a light or notice the Xbox was on. One night I ducked into the guest room and hid behind the bed. To my horror, my mum followed me into the room and turned on the lights. I was panicking, so when she started digging through the closet with her back to me, I just made a run for it. I nearly brushed her shirt, and if she'd seen me, I'd probably have given her a heart attack. But I made it and kept going all the way to bed. About 5 years went by, and my mum said something like, "You're such a quiet walker." And I told her it was because of my basement trips, thinking I had nothing to lose. My mum's face went kind of solemn when I explained, and she said, "So there really was someone down there." And she explained that she remembered that exact night and the feeling that there was a ghost in the room. Over the next couple of days, she'd stare into space and just say, "I can't believe you were really there." She seemed to get over it, but she probably checks empty rooms a little closer now. I visited my dad when I was 6 or 7 years old at the place where he worked, or so I was told. I remember remarking at the time, and people laughed at me because I said it just looked like a prison. The people laughing were the guards, and I was indeed visiting my dad at Terminal Island Federal Correctional Institution, where he was a federal inmate. Once when I was about 7 or 8, my family was having a pool party, and my 20-something aunt was sitting by the pool with a glass of clear liquid. I was hot and thirsty, so I reached for her drink, and she said, "Don't drink that, it's pool water." I wondered why in the heck she'd have a glass of pool water, but I left it alone. Years later, as my family's alcohol consumption habits became a lot clearer to me, I realized she was probably drinking vodka. My mum used to call us in for dinner by yelling out the back door from the kitchen. I was in middle school before I realized the scream door was actually called a screen door. When I was a kid, my dad bought me one of those big candy cane things filled with jelly beans. I was so excited to eat them, but I was told I had to wait for the next day. I asked for them later, but apparently they disappeared into thin air. I couldn't find my candy cane anywhere. Lots of weird stuff used to happen around our house, like borderline paranormal stuff, and my dad said it was just that. No, it wasn't. That motherfricker ate my frickin' jelly beans. I think the part you skipped over here leaves some questions. You mentioned that paranormal stuff happened in your place all the time, and I wonder just how much was down to your dear old dad, because the jelly beans should have triggered a full-blown interrogation. You know, I'm not sure if this is considered a mystery or not. My mother, who passed in 2009, used to make meatloaf every single year on Groundhog's Day. Every single year. Every single year she'd tell us it was groundhog, and I always thought it just tasted like ground beef. But I was a kid. I'm 33 now. Last year I said something to my brother about it and asked if he knew where my mum got the ground hog. I wanted to do that for my son. My brother had no idea what I was talking about. I told him about it and he started laughing. My wife started laughing, and my own son, who didn't know why, started laughing as well. Mum got me real good, you guys. Mystery solved. It was just regular meatloaf. We grew up poor, and at the age of 10, my friends were all having these crazy birthday parties with petting zoos, bouncing houses, clowns, stuff like that. So my mother, who's a very resourceful woman indeed, decided I would have a sleepover for my 11th birthday. It was great, and we were going to make ice cream cones. So we got all the stuff out with my mum, and my mum opened the box of cones up, and they were all smashed up. She announced that we weren't having regular ice cream, we were having Magic Castle sundaes, because the broken ice cream cones resembled the sections of a castle. We all thought this was great, and we had them. When my friends went home, they asked their parents to make Magic Castle sundaes as well. 2 days ago, I found out that my mother was just getting the past sell-by foods from behind the grocery store. They weren't expired, just past the sell-by date. She had no idea that the cones were broken up until she opened them with us. She thought of the magic castle idea quickly, and we all loved it. Just goes to show how stupid kids are. Goes to show how quick-witted she was, and able to make it seem special enough that the other kids wanted it too. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I live and grew up in the Deep South. As a child, from earliest memories until about 8, we'd take a winter trip up to Stowe, Vermont to see the grandparents. I'd have scary nights hearing ghosts wailing outside the windows. It was terrifying. My grandparents moved south and we stopped going. When I was in my 30s, I took another trip up to Vermont. First night stay, I heard the ghosts. Turns out the winter winds up north are way different than the winds of southern nights. Suddenly, my general fear of the dark disappeared as I realized fully what the source of the sound was. When I was really young, me and my siblings would play in my grandparents' yard. My grandfather would tell us to stay away from the skunk hole at the edge of the yard. We lived in South Texas, so this wasn't something out of the ordinary, and we just avoided it like any other animal home. Years later, it dawned on me it was actually the septic tank access. The reason that my aunt punched her husband at the pool during a huge family vacation. It was because she found out that the long-distance charges to the hotel room they shared had a ton of calls to a woman he was known to think was really swell. I have these massive gaps in my memories as a child, like weirdly inexplicable ones that always felt weird. Not just basic forgetting stuff. I've had a few instances of this happening as an adult as well. Well, it turns out I have a dissociative disorder that can cause amnesia. As a kid, I played Medal of Honor Allied Assault with my brother. We got to the 5th level, which took place in a rainy French city similar to Saving Private Ryan. However, we always got stuck on the first objective, which was to locate the bazooka team. There were no clues as to where this team was in a giant rubble-filled city with poor visibility. To make things worse, hidden enemy snipers would constantly fire at you, making the search much more difficult than it already was. My brother and I practically scoured every nook and cranny, but we never found that team. If the bazooka team was trying to stay hidden, they were doing a very good job. In the months that followed, we reinstalled and replayed the game several times, but we'd always get stuck on that level. Fast forward several years and I got the digital version of Allied Assault for nostalgia's sake. I dreaded playing the 5th level, but to my surprise, I easily cleared the first objective by happening across the corpses of the bazooka team in one of the buildings. Turns out the CD we originally played on was bugged, and the bodies never even rendered into the game. All we did was waste several hours looking for a group of people that never made it to the battle in the first place. Giddy at the prospect of finally completing the game, I happily continued the level only to quit when I kept getting sniped by those damn hidden snipers. When I was 10, my godfather gave me $20 as a Christmas gift. At the end of the dinner, the money had disappeared. For years, my parents blamed me for being irresponsible with my money. Years later, we figured out that after she was caught stealing stuff from my aunt's house, that my cousin's fiancé at the time was a kleptomaniac. Turns out she was the one that stole the money. One evening, when camping, my brother caught a fish that we decided to keep alive in the cooler for some reason. Well, the next morning we ran out to see the fish and it had grown like 5 inches. We were so excited and didn't know how the fish grew that much overnight. Last year we bought it up and my dad said that he'd got up that morning and seen the fish being taken by a raccoon and that he'd spent the next hour or so frantically fishing for another one. He said he caught the new fish, the first one that he was able to catch, just a few minutes before we got up. I'd never questioned that the fish had grown that much as I grew up myself, but after hearing what really happened, I did feel like we probably should have wondered about that more at the time. I have a similar story. When we were young, we got a pair of kittens, a black one, mine, and a grey one, my brother's. They got some vaccines, and some days later we woke up and the grey kitten had grown. Wow, cool. Why didn't my black kitten grow too? Strange, but whatever. Stopped questioning it. Turns out the grey kitten had randomly passed away one night. So my mom sent my dad out to get a new grey kitten so the kids wouldn't be sad. All he could find was a slightly older and bigger grey kitten, so they told us one of his shots had helped the cat grow. I believed that until late high school when my mom came clean. You probably told the story of how shots made one of your kittens grow to a teacher, who was then like, "Oh, honey." Yeah, given how kids like to blabber about the stranger phenomenon in their lives, there is a very good chance that this happened, and some poor teacher did indeed have to keep a straight face despite the knowledge that a kitty had recently died. Sad times. My father used to take us on camping and on hike and bike rides. He taught us about safety in the woods and on the water and how to navigate using maps. So it wasn't all that strange when he said one day, when I was maybe 10, we were doing a game where we'd be blindfolded and taken on a drive. The object of the game was to call out what direction we were turning by feel, and then ultimately, after driving about 30 minutes, give a guess roughly where we were and which direction home was in. He was impressed with how well we did, and we took off the blindfolds and went for a hike. I never really thought much about it. Years later, I realized why we played that game. My dad was in criminal psychology, especially for unspeakable act offenders. He was kidnap-proofing us, but in a light-hearted way so there was no fear or trauma. It's awesome that your dad instilled a sense of direction in you. That said, if I saw someone roll up in a car full of blindfolded kids that they then led into the woods, I'd be pretty concerned that I was witnessing a real-life, "You think you're scared? I'm the one who has to walk out of here alone" kind of moment. When I was 4, I vividly remember getting into my mum's car and her telling me that our cat had died. She told me how she rushed him to the vet and he was shedding fur, something was seriously wrong. Despite her best efforts, he died. I never knew why he died and why it happened so suddenly, but I accepted that it happened. Fast forward about 15 years, I'm home from college for Christmas. On Christmas Eve, I'm out drinking to the store with my dad and uncle. They're talking about the cat my parents got for Christmas one year, the cat mentioned above. My dad says, "Yeah, that thing got too aggressive, so I took it to a farm and gave it away." Normally when the family pet dies, the parents lie to the kid and say it went to a farm upstate somewhere to ease the burden. Not my parents. They told me the horrifying truth even though it wasn't, true. I was watching Star Trek The Next Generation with my dad when somebody told Riker to wash his back. When I asked my father why someone would say that to another person, he said, "So that you can smell someone coming up behind you." It wasn't until years later that I understood how easy it is to hear watch as wash and how committed my dad was to willfully deceiving his children for personal satisfaction. As a PS here, my brother and I were convinced that he spoke Spanish until we were teenagers. He did not. He simply rattled off a string of Taco Bell items as fast as he could. I learned that John Travolta was actually John Travolta, which really made a lot more sense. When I was like 8 or so, I answered our house phone and it was a man who asked to speak to my mum. Didn't ask for her by name and said, "Could I speak to your mom, please?" I asked who it was and he said, "It's Santa Claus." I was so excited and ran to my mum and I was telling all of my friends for days that Santa Claus had called my house. This led me to believe in Santa for a few years longer than most kids normally do. I was heartbroken when I found out that Santa wasn't real. Years and years later, I remembered to ask my mum who had called that day and said they were Santa Claus. It was our reverend, and my mum was a deacon. He had known me for years, so recognized my voice when I answered, and knew what age I was. It had never occurred to me. Not mine, but my husband's story. I hope he doesn't see this because then my cover is blown. He said in middle school there was a time that he'd get pulled out of class to shoot free throws in the gym. Only him. He didn't think this was strange, but didn't understand why he was the only one that got to do that. Turns out his parents told his teachers that he couldn't participate in the life skills class. My dad used to say he could stop the rain for a moment by snapping his fingers. He'd do it in the car when it was pouring. I was so mesmerized. I told all my friends about it well into late elementary school. I've since realized that he'd snap as we drove underneath an overpass. My dad is an ex-Catholic, and every night when he'd tuck me in until I left the house, he'd say, "We love you, God bless you, good night." And I was always wondering why since he stopped going to church so long ago. Fast forward to me being 28 years old and watching an old Bruce Springsteen concert together. One of his favorite artists, Bruce says, "We love you, God bless you, good night," at the end of his set. I turned my head towards my dad and asked if this was why he said that for years to me at night. He laughed and said, "Yeah, I have no original material." Who ate all the cherries in the cherry cake? I was blamed for this for years after someone picked out all of the cherries and ate them during a family Christmas party. 8 years later, my little sister confessed to me that it had been her. The mystery of why my mum never ordered anything for herself and was never hungry when she took my sister and I to eat out. 25 years later, she told us she was really hungry and wanted to eat too, but she only had enough money to feed the two of us. She didn't want us to feel guilty. I love my mum so much. When I was a kid in the 70s, my parents worked in Canada's Arctic, but were from Nova Scotia. I had a pet mouse, Pixie. Pixie died the night before our family flew home to Nova Scotia for summer vacation. It was many, many years later before I realized that probably wasn't a sad coincidence.
Truck drivers, while traveling through the night, what is the creepiest thing you've ever seen? My father was a truck driver in an area of the country known for toxic waste and Superfund sites. He would tell me tales of an oily purple mist or vapor similar to the heat off a road on a hot day, rising off the swamps around the trucking companies at night. A lot of the truckers he worked with would get sick and start vomiting from the vapor. This was back in the 80s and early 90s, before environmentalism really began to make its impact in our area. My dad has been a lifetime truck driver, first a mover, then refrigerated trailers, then freights, where he is now. He has previously stated that he has seen some crazy stuff. Fights, overdoses, etc. So last summer he was driving, somewhere in Virginia. Note that he complained to me and my mom the week before how people in Virginia drive like buttholes. So anyway, he's going down the interstate and sees the flashing lights of a wrecker and a state cop pulled over to assist a broken down truck on the opposite side of the highway. My dad has always been a curious guy, so naturally he slows down 10 miles per hour or so to take a good look at the guy on the other side of the highway and what's going on. Well, then this happens. My dad has always told me if there is a car or any sort of vehicle broken down on the side of the road, get to the farthest lane from them, naturally to give them space to move around their vehicle if they need to inspect it for damage and whatnot. Well, people in Virginia drive like buttholes, so they didn't. Even with a flashing light, the original truck driver who is broken down opens his cab door and begins to climb out of his truck. My dad said he did a little hop off the lowest stair from his truck to the highway. In that instant, this car smashes into the guy, killing him immediately. My dad had to stop and regain his composure because he felt like he would pass out. Now that's across the median and on the other side of the road, so I can only imagine how the wrecker and cop reacted. My dad never likes to talk about it. It brings him to tears thinking about it. He sent a card to the family and offered his condolences, but still to this day, it messes him up more than anything he can recall. The first time I took Highway 90 after a pickup in Del Rio, Texas, heading to another pickup in El Paso the next morning. That is a dark and lonely stretch of road. Was told to look for Martha's lights, but didn't see any and kept trucking. What I did see west of there were these bright lights out in the middle of nowhere. It's pretty sparse out there, so I thought I was coming into a town or something. Nope. As I get closer, I see it's some kind of compound, very well lit with security fences all around and a stubby-looking blimp sitting in there. What the hell? With that much light and fencing, this has to be government. X-Files or some crap going on, I thought. Freaky. Mashed my motor and got the hell out of there. Called a friend of mine the next day that I know has rolled through there before and asked him what he knew about it. Find out it's a border patrol facility, looking for illegals. I guess the unnamed blimp goes up attached to a tether to look for heat signatures or something. My overactive imagination was just going into overdrive, I guess. Stopped listening to Art Bell after that. Tells you how long ago this was. I don't even know what Art Bell is. Was hauling a load from California to Michigan once, and my GPS said the trip would be 2 hours quicker if I took US 50 instead of I-80. I soon learned this was the loneliest road in America. No services or anything at all for hundreds of miles. At 0200 in the morning, I was too tired to keep driving and had to stop on a large shoulder for the night. I was still 200 miles from any services and was thoroughly nervous that night because I've heard stories of truckers getting killed while parked in an isolated area overnight. It was also pitch black and I could hear coyotes while taking a whiz. Luckily, I was undisturbed and continued my trip in the morning. Something else is singing trailers. When I was new to trucking, there was a quiet night while I was in my truck bed and I kept hearing an unusual and consistent creaking sound. Upon inspection, it was the trailer airlines making dull noises. Still can't figure out why they do this and when they do it. Lasts for hours. Another thing, well, I was driving on the I-10 at night and was around Arizona and California. There was a sandstorm at the time, and at the time, the roads would just disappear for like a mile because it was covered in sand. I was lucky because there were a bunch of guys with ATVs driving around and along the road, so I didn't lose my way. Believe it or not, I actually picked this topic because I liked ice road truckers as a kid. Guy I drove with told me a story about killing a hitchhiker. They were in the desert. It was twilight and the guy was wearing tan clothes. He had a girl with him that he said he'd never forget her screaming after he clipped the guy and sent him flying. He knew the guy was dead because he wasn't bleeding, something I didn't understand at first, but made sense after he told me. When you're dead, your heart stops pumping, so no gushing blood like you might expect. He was a Vietnam War vet, so I figured he has other experiences with this. He even kept driving that night after giving the police report and all the other fallout. He just loved driving that much. I drove third shift long haul for years. Start at 6:00 p.m., run till 8 a.m. Never saw anything close to being called paranormal, but the wrecks I saw daily. Being low light, I'm sure some looked worse when passing, but it's sobering to pass wrecks with multiple ambulances, covered bodies, burnt out cars, multiple fire and police units. Past many a crash in the day. Always seems more dramatic at night. I mean, appropriate lighting kind of does that to any scene regardless of the context. That's literally the entire art of filmmaking, kind of. And naturally, flashing bright lights in the dark scene of a crash or some kind of tragic incident really does bring home how serious it is. Not me, but my brother saw a pale-skinned little girl with matted blonde hair walking down the side of a desolate Texas road, swinging her arms around like Vince McMahon, except leaning forward slightly and walking furiously. Oh, I forgot, she was also wearing a dingy old nightgown. Being the guy he is, he started to pull over to offer her help or a ride, but she turned her head, and it wasn't even a little girl at all, but actually a little person, and stared at him, mouth half open, never slowing her pace or turning away until he floored it and never looked back. He called me right after it happened and was clearly shaken. I don't believe in supernatural anything really, and neither has he ever, but something about this girl shook his conviction. I like to think she was sleepwalking and was tired, but it's pretty tough to write off the opinion of a solid guy I've known my whole life. I was moving heavy equipment from job site to job site, and a lot of the time it was me dropping off a dozer, excavator, etc. Late at night. Pulled up to a side, and as my headlight came across the lot, I was leaving the equipment, and I saw a man with a clown mask and camo clothing on top of the long dumpster, digging through it. I stopped and backed up to put the light back on him as he jumped down the backside of the long dumpster. Talk about looking over my shoulder every 5 seconds while I unchained and got the excavator off the trailer, and I was out. Never did see or hear anything, just assumed some creepy clown was watching me from the woods. I get it. That would be terrifying to see a man in camouflage and a clown mask lurking in the darkness. I'd probably be thinking, goddamn, time to get the heck out of here. This sounds like a goddamn Scooby-Doo plotline. I can picture it already. The mystery of the camo clown. It's the business odor. The economy's bad. Biden's America. You meddling kids. Bin Man here. I started around 4:30 a.m., was in a pretty remote area, one house every half mile or so, and I saw this dude standing in boxer shorts and boots on, nothing else, holding what looked like a head of a doll. It looked too small to be human. It was creepy as heck. Thankfully, the bin I had to empty was another half mile down the road. Sounds like the opening of some kind of new Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie. It didn't happen to me directly, but my uncle was literally abducted while working as a trucker. I'll try to remember the details as best I can. He only told me the story once, then refused to speak about it again. He worked as a trucker his entire adult life, or at least for as long as I was alive. One day, he was up and around Illinois or Indiana area, I think, and it was early evening. He pulled over at a truck stop for a break. He fueled up the truck, then went inside and had dinner. It was one of those with a diner-type place inside. Then took a shower. Point being that he was in there for a little while, 30 to 45 minutes. When he came out to get back in the truck, everything looked normal. But as soon as he opened the door, a guy jumped out from behind the cabin. I think he was hiding between the cabin and the trailer, and pulled a weapon. I think he said it was a gun, but it might have been a knife. Guy orders my uncle to get in the cabin and climb in the back. My uncle drove one of those trucks with the sleeper bed area, the ones you have in the back. Then the guy climbed in after. He told my uncle to lay down on the bed and put his hands behind his back. Then he took some bungee cables my uncle kept in the cabin and tied him up hands and feet. Didn't gag him, as far as I can remember. Then the guy gets in the driver's seat and just starts driving. Uncle said he had no trouble getting the truck going, so he clearly had some experience driving big rigs. From what I remember, he didn't talk to my uncle the whole time. He just drove and would occasionally look back and flash the weapon to remind my uncle that he could mess him up if he wanted. My uncle said he couldn't really see where they were, but he could tell they were on the interstate again. After a long time of driving throughout the night, my uncle mentioned it was probably when the fuel tank was getting low, he pulled over at another truck stop. The guy just looked back at my uncle, seemed to think about something, maybe whether or not to untie him, then just got out, shut the door, and left. My uncle said he laid there for a while, scared he was getting fuel or food or something, then coming back, but he never did. After several more hours, another truck pulled into the spot next to him, and my uncle yelled for help until the guy opened the door and found him. Pretty sure they called the police. My uncle never directly said, but I can't fathom that they wouldn't. But they never found the guy as far as my uncle knew. Turns out that he drove him to the next state over and stopped when he was at 10% of a tank left, and it looks like he left on foot. Sounds like it was fortunate that no one else was fueling at the time, or he might have taken their truck too. After that, I want to say my uncle got like a month off from work to go home and spend time with his family. He actually went back to work as a trucker for a few years more, but he would never do long-haul trips anymore, and he pretty much retired the second he had enough years in. It was scary listening to that story, not only because it's messed up circumstances, but also because my uncle was a pretty tough dude, and you could just see in his eyes that this thing still haunted him. He did seem extremely grateful, though, that the guy didn't actually hurt him. My cousin was 1 year old at the time, and was my uncle's only kid. I guess the moral of the story is, be freaking careful, everyone. There's some messed up people in this world. They are right, the world is not just sunshine, rainbows, and lollipops. There are lots of people who will want to hurt you for any reason all over the place. So my stepfather was a truck driver for 30 years. He stopped driving after a particularly windy night. A guy on a motorcycle was riding too close to the side of his trailer, and I guess the wind blew and he got pulled off his bike under the wheels, and he always told me not to ride my bike next to a truck, because they create whirlwind, and without those side barriers you could get pulled under. He said he saw the bike swerve off into the median, and that's how he knew. He hit the bottle pretty hard after that, and never was quite the same. I have had to reread this several times over because they have refused to use any semblance of punctuation whatsoever in this entire bit of writing, and it is maddening. I'm not exactly what you'd call a truck driver, but my uncle used to have a small fleet, and sometimes he'd pay me to recover a truck when a driver got fired or quit in the middle of a hole. By far the creepiest thing that ever happened to me was when I recovered a truck outside of Detroit. The driver tried to buy crank from an undercover cop and was fired, and my uncle flew me up there to deliver the load and deadhead back to Chicago. Anyway, it's pretty late when I get in, and even later when I get to the truck stop the rig is parked at. So after I called my uncle to let him know I was on site and the cargo was secure, and made sure everything was in working order, I figured I'd catch some sleep and head out first thing in the morning. As soon as I get settled into the rack, I hear this tap, tap, tap on the drive side window. So I unbutt the bunk and slide into the seat, where I found myself face to face with this beat up looking black lady. She goes, "You looking for some company?" Now, I've never had the dubious pleasure of spending some quality time with a lizard before, and I wasn't about to start, but I had dealt with them before, and frequently a "no thanks" doesn't get the point across. So I'm all, "No, get your butt off my truck and leave me alone." She looks me dead in the eye and says, "Honey, I ain't on your truck," and turned to walk away. Sure enough, she hadn't been standing on my truck. She was just like 7 feet tall and wearing platforms. Well, at that point, what are the platforms even for? A few years back, I pulled into an empty rest area up near Cadillac in Michigan, around 3 a.m. It was the middle of February, and there was a few inches of snow on the ground, and I had to trudge a quarter of a mile from the truck lot to a pavilion, which is no fun. On the way back to the truck, I looked to my right and realized I'm not alone. In fact, I'm equidistant from my truck and a bobcat the size of a large dog that's watching me intently. I instantly freeze in my tracks and it takes a few steps towards me before stopping as well. Now I have no idea what to do about a bobcat, but I figure he can definitely beat me to the truck, especially given the terrain. I don't even know if they're dangerous to humans, but I've played some Red Dead Redemption in my time and I'm not happy about the situation. I turn full face to it and start backing toward the truck, all the while waving my arms and bellowing at it, trying to drive it away. It's not very promising because it keeps taking a few steps towards me and stopping. About this time, a pair of headlights flash over the lot and a minivan pulls into the lot, completely oblivious to the National Geographic event taking place. I start yelling as loud as I can and manage to alert the guy driving it that there's a crazy person wandering around. He starts his vehicle up again, preparing for flight, and as he backs out, his lights hit the bobcat and it takes off into the trees again. I make a run for the truck, the van drives off into the night, and thus ended probably the fourth most dangerous encounter I've had in Michigan. Why even lie about there being a crazy person wandering around? I'd be like, hey, honk at this goddamn bobcat, run it over if you have to, it's intimidating me. Driving between Illinois and Wisconsin last year around 2 a.m., suddenly my headlights illuminate the highway ahead of me and the road is covered with many large splotches of freshly deposited blood and unrecognizable tatters of flesh. This was like something out of Clive Barker's Nightmares. I can only guess that a semi must have smashed into a deer at highway speeds and just obliterated the poor beast. Yeah, I'm a paramedic and drive through the night. One time I was going through an alleyway at like 4 a.m. looking for someone who overdosed and found two people shooting up on a mattress surrounded by human feces, and the ground was moving because it was all rats scattering at the side of the ambulance lights. This one isn't about truckers, but I just wanted to let you all know that this is the endpoint for people that do hardcore drugs on the regular and don't know how to control themselves. Don't do drugs, kids. Went with my grandpa from Fresno, California to someplace in Death Valley. We were in the middle of nowhere between towns in the California deserts. I wasn't paying much attention to the road at the moment, and suddenly the whole rig swerved hard. I figured it was an animal of some sort, but no. The sewed mirrors showed a woman wearing some sort of long, flowing dress. We were both confused as there were no cars parked anywhere. How she got there and what happened to her, we'll never know. Yes, we did report it to the police. Oh, lady of the desert with your long black flowing skirt, I don't know where you're going, why you're here, or what is worse. My grandfather was a truck driver at a lumber yard for about 25 years after World War II. He once told a story about how he and a co-worker both left at the same time from the yard. My grandfather would often go first, and the others would follow, but the other guy insisted on taking the lead. So they're driving on the highway, full speed, and his co-worker gets cut off by a car that just switched lanes without looking. He slams on the brakes. My grandfather noted this, and being so close behind, tapped the brakes and was able to do an emergency slide into the left lane without slamming into anyone. The car was rear-ended by the truck. My grandfather pulled over and came running back, only to find that the contents of the load, tons of lumber, shifted forward during the hard brake and destroyed the cab, decapitating his friend in the process. While my grandfather was no stranger to such sights in the war, especially as someone who fought on islands in the Pacific, he said this was especially tough on him, since when you're in war, you prepare yourself for this kind of thing. You don't expect something so gruesome in civilian life. Trucker here. Creepiest thing would have to be wind, to be honest. Driving down the road and you can't hear it, and I couldn't feel it in my truck. However, the truck in front of me seemed to lift up and just flip on its side. It seemed like it was out of nowhere. I guess it isn't that creepy, but when you're following and the truck in front of you seems to float up and onto its side, it is a little concerning. The most scared I have ever been was going over Donner Pass one night in late April. I had checked the weather reports and the only concern was supposed to be light snow flurries at the highest elevations. CA will issue mandatory restrictions indicating that you have to put chains on your tires. So I checked the CA.website and no restrictions were called for. I went through the inspection station at Truckee and they were asking if we had chains on the truck, but still no call to put them on. About 10 miles up the road, the sky opened up into the worst whiteout blizzard I have ever been in. I could barely see 50 feet in front of me, and there had been other trucks ahead of me, but I lost sight of his light completely. I could see his tracks in the snow. I slowed down to about 20 miles per hour. Then, just to make it worse, the wind was blowing and the snow was swirling in all directions, and I began to experience a strange vertigo, like I was flying and tumbling in the air. I had to glue my line of sight on those tracks in front of me and hope that guy did not drive off the road. I made it. Only lasted about 30 miles and it turned into heavy rain. I told my dispatcher if I ever had to go through there again at night and any snow was forecast, I was going to shut down until daylight. See, this was the sort of thing I wanted to watch Ice Road Truckers for, but obviously when you get down to it and in the shoes of the person driving, it's like, hell no, I don't want to be in this situation. I never want to be in that situation again. Just a casual trucker here. Can't say I've seen anything that I would consider paranormal, creepy. Although, when I started, I always thought I would get fortunate enough that some girls would flash me or something. That's never happened. But I have seen like 4 dudes jerking off. Sometimes, my friend, that is simply the way that life goes. We can't expect everything that we want to happen in life, even if it's as mundane and simple as a girl flashing you while you're on the road. And I'm sorry for that. Doctors, what do patients do that annoy you? I don't like when a patient gets a full workup and their lab work and imaging is completely normal and the patient gets enraged. They don't know what's wrong with me. I'm going to XYZ hospital instead. When they literally can't understand how they are harming themselves. For example, my mom once said that a woman who smoked while pregnant couldn't accept that she was harming the baby. The conversation went something like this. The baby is underdeveloped for its age due to you smoking. So she's sick? In a way, yes. So when will I get some antibiotics for my baby? It doesn't work that way, ma'am. You're making her sick by smoking. But aside from that, she's fine, right? And so on and so on. When a patient is admitted and on their second day, they say, "Hey doc, I feel better now. Can I go home?" Yeah, no, you go home when I say you go home, because feeling better does not mean you are 100% well. Technically, patients can leave whenever they want, but if you want to be discharged with the minimum risk of ending right back in the ER, please listen to your doctor. We don't want you to stay any longer than what's needed. Trust us. So even if you say, "Can I go home?" in a joking manner, the fake laugh and strange smile of the doctor in response is proof enough that we've heard that so many times before, and we'd like you to stop. As an American, complain about pain. In the gosh darn awesome US of A, we fix things. Everything. It's this ethos that also permeates into how Americans deal with issues of their health. It is completely unacceptable to be in pain at any point in time. Placing IVs to deliver medication has to get local anesthetic. Simple wrist fracture gets diluted IV, one of the most potent IV pain meds available, in addition to local anesthetic and an oral pain medication. Immediately post-op from lumbar spinal fusion, why does my back hurt? After being in a car accident while driving drunk and only sustaining a tibial fracture and just had it fixed, doc, I'm just in too much pain to leave. Sitting comfortably in bed eating delivery surrounded by friends reeking of weed. You know, I get it might be annoying, but sometimes when people are just openly complaining about things, it is kind of therapeutic. It makes them feel better. Not a doctor, but an ER scribe. Patients that mumble and patients that can't give a coherent history. Also, when a patient rates their pain as a 10 out of 10 in triage, but they're chilling and playing games on their phone when we go to see them. On one hand, there's probably not much else to do when you're in the ER. On the other hand, I do hate it as well when people are just obsessed with their phones. I would probably rather it if they were playing on a Nintendo Switch or something. Like, the thing I hate about it most is when someone is just scrolling through Instagram or Facebook or what have you for like, I don't know, an hour while having a conversation with them, and then they're like, "Oh, you get on my case for it, but you do it too." It's like, no, I'm actually communicating with someone on the other side of this thing. My friend's dad is a doctor who works in the ER. He complains daily about how he wishes he wouldn't save most of these drunk, overweight morons who don't contribute anything to society, and complains about how he feels bad for doing his job, which is actively working against Mother Nature's careful elimination of the unfit. I think maybe it would be in your friend's father's best interest if he got a different job. I've worked in an ER for the last 4 years. I work very closely with many doctors. When I come into the ER, anything that isn't life-threatening because your doctor can't see you, you're a moron and waited till the last minute. You have crap insurance that no one but an ER will take, but you don't have primary care doctor, etc., etc., etc. Are we going to see you? Yes. Are we going to be polite and professional? Yes. Does the hospital business model exist assuming that there will be so many thousands of clinic-type patients in the ER? Yes. But goddammit, are we going to be annoyed that you are taking precious time away from sick patients, delaying triage and rooming time for sick patients or just annoyed at you in general? Yes. Good rule of thumb. If your problem can wait till tomorrow, it does not belong in an ER. I've actually witnessed that. I think it was this like Muslim lady or something, like a hijab and stuff, and she came into like the A&E and she seemed fine, and she just kind of came up to the desk when there's people like bleeding with like really bad stuff going on with them and goes, "My finger hurt." And I kid you not, this little girl like a twisted up arm who was crying a moment ago like stopped and like looked at this woman like, "You don't belong here, honey." Not a doctor, but my brother is. He tells me he gets very annoyed by most of his diabetes patients. Many of them never take care of their health. They drink soda and eat BS all the time, and they do not exercise. Of course, they get really surprised when they see their sugar test results. "I'm sorry, doctor, but I love chocolate so much." My mother is a nurse, so she has a full list. First off, she hates people who sue. She hates them because 90% of the time, the doctor is doing their best, and it would be ridiculous to sue. But then they turn around and straight up sue the doctors. This causes the doctors to have to run a bunch of unnecessary tests, which not only waste yours and the doctor's time, but it ramps up your hospital bill. This in turn causes the lower class stress, because then they can't afford going to the hospital. If everyone just agreed to not sue, then the hospital bills would be much more affordable, which would make everybody, except the buttholes who sue, happier. Her second hated thing is the mean homeless drunks who come in because they have nowhere else to go, and then they are spitting and trying to fight the nurses because they are so messed up on God knows what. I'm just going to say I have no idea how accurate any of this is. In America, is it like a common thing for people to threaten to sue their doctors? I'm an oral and maxillofacial surgeon. Patients who start crying make me feel as if they're my victims, even though I'm on their side. From my father, ER repeat visitors with new objects stuck in their butt, and from my sister, an NICU nurse, parents that don't come in for newborn bonding time. ER nurse here. I hate when patients tell me the diagnosis that they think they have instead of their symptoms. Might as well Google the meds for it and go straight to asking the pharmacist for them and bypass emergency, dude. In so much pain. Constantly asking for more painkillers. On physical examination, shouts out when touched and unable to do much movement. Miraculously manages to heal completely to get up and go out for a cigarette break on the hour every hour. Let's be honest, people that smoke cigarettes can be the most annoying people in just about every setting, especially work. I used to do laboring, and I remember we got this one really freaking fat guy come in one time for the job. Only stayed a day. I'm having trouble carrying a load, and I ask him for some help, and he just goes to me, "Oh, I'm going for my cigarette break." It was like, you had one like 20 minutes ago. It's like, "Yeah, I'm going for another." "Well, can you help me with this while we're going down together?" And he's like, "No, I'm on my break." I hate working with people who smoke. Comes in for a cold. "I know my body. Antibiotics are the only thing that helps. I need an antibiotic and I'm not leaving until I get one." Okay, I admittedly did this once with my dentist because they were like, "I'm going to pull your wisdom teeth out because they're giving you abscesses." And I said, "Well, you're going to keep on giving me antibiotics because I'm not going to let you pull my wisdom teeth out." And I feel like I was kind of right to do that in all honesty, because like they haven't given me an abscess ever since. Not going to dialysis because you don't feel well. Usually the cause of not feeling well is because you skipped your last dialysis appointment, Karen. There was no mention of a Karen, I just thought it sounded funnier that way. This happens all the time. Do you have any pre-existing conditions? No, I'm very, very healthy. Do you take any medication? Oh, yes, I take this for my blood pressure, this for my blood sugar, this for my MI heart, this for my thyroid, etc., etc., etc. If you want a professional to listen to all of your personal problems, go to an office with a psychotherapist, psychologist, psychiatrist, LCSW, or counselor on their sign and nothing else. Your podiatrist, dentist, or optometrist knows next to nothing about mental health and certainly isn't qualified to treat it. Neither is an otolaryngologist, a gynecologist, or a thoracic surgeon. Honestly, family physicians who have only the slightest training in mental health yet do the majority of prescribing of psychotropic medication in the US really are only a stopgap solution, and in best practice wouldn't be allowed to prescribe those meds at all. Ditto times 2 for psychiatric nurses and PAs. Could you tell that some of those words were making me slip up? Not a doctor, but a pharmacist, and I get this a lot. A patient comes in. "I have a 2-year-old with a runny nose, and I found this homeopathic remedy that doesn't actually have any medicine in it. Is this a good choice?" Well, there's no evidence to suggest that this product is effective, but this Claritin or Zyrtec is not only cheaper, it has real medicine in it that has been clinically proven to help manage allergy-type symptoms, including runny noses, and is labeled to be appropriate for children this young. No thanks, I'll just give him this other crap instead after wasting 10 minutes of your valuable time against your professional advice. As a psychologist, DNAs did not attend. I find it really difficult to do other work while waiting to see if my patient has come. All the prep and supervision time also feels wasteful, although they are part of the work because avoidance is hugely common in everything. My mother has worked as a biller for a doctor's office, gastroenterologist, for years. Some of the ones she comes home complaining about include, but not limited to, people telling her about their symptoms. She's not a doctor, please save this for him. Calling to complain about how much an office visit costs. Yes, even if it is $20, she does not control this. There is not anything she can do about it. Bringing in stool samples to show her, yes, it really happens. That poor, poor woman. As a doctor, I really have to add in that a lot of these comments bother me. The last thing the big portion of these patients need is another reason to be scared of going to the doctor, or personal judgment from the doctor. If the patient came in with what you consider a low-level reason, take the time to educate. That is at least half the reason any patient is there, and they can appreciate it. Ask yourselves if you enjoy going for medical and dental visits yourself. I don't. It can be a vaguely embarrassing, invasive, humbling experience, though I do appreciate the value of being educated again of what it's like to be a patient. While I don't see it often, there is one thing that annoys me about patients, though. I wouldn't express it to them. Anyone who defends cigarette use as something more natural and relatively innocuous. I had the aunt of a pregnant teenage patient rhetorically ask me if quitting smoking would cause a shock for the baby and therefore be harmful for the pregnancy. It was clear from the tone that she thought the girl should continue to smoke. Another wanted only natural medications and vitamins during the pregnancy. No vaccines, fully natural childbirth with no cord cutting, all of which I am fine with for the record, but continued to smoke half PPD during the pregnancy. To all smoking, pregnant, and preconceptual patients, I say, for the grand majority of pregnancies, up to the point the child is born, you quitting smoking is more important than anything I can do as a doctor, and I will gladly help you in any way I can towards that goal. I think maybe many people needed to hear that right there, because at the end of the day, these people aren't here to judge you. Granted, they probably will, because that is definitely going to happen in all of these situations, but at the end of the day, they're really here to help us. Sorry, I'm not a doctor. I'm only a lowly optician, but we have patients too, and they make me so angry. So, when I spend time fixing their rimless glasses, I hand them back and they start bending them to check and see if they still wiggle, which makes them wiggle again. When they put on a brand new pair of glasses and they start moving them all around, up and down, right to side, and claim their vision seems weird. Well, yes, you aren't allowing your eyes to relax through the focal point. Put it on your face and focus on one thing at a time until your eyes submit to the refraction. People who have been in progressive lenses for years but buy a new pair and suddenly don't know how to use the lenses properly. I give them a reading card and they try to look through the top of their lens to see up close and then claim they can't see. Well, yeah, that part of the lens is only for seeing far away. Look down, please. Not patients, but doctors. Doctors who are too arrogant and egotistical to acknowledge that the RX they wrote doesn't work for the patient. I don't even blame the doctor for the RX being wrong. It could be wrong from the patient's blood pressure, eye pressure, cataracts they refuse to get removed, allergies, dry eye issues. Maybe the patient is just stupid and can't answer questions correctly, but the doctor should always allow the patient to come back and get retested if need be. Also, don't blame my glasses. I check my end to make sure we didn't mess up before we send them back over. It's usually doctors who have an optical in their office who have this issue. We're their competition. Maybe they're just stupid. That is surprisingly the answer for a lot of things. I know sometimes I'm just stupid. As an emergency medicine doctor, leaving against medical advice when they have something serious, I had a patient with a very large pneumothorax, collapsed lung. He insisted that he knew his body and had to leave so he could sell his car. Another patient had a STEMI, the more serious type of heart attacks, and left against medical advice from the ambulance. Even had the cardiologist talk to him on the phone, essentially saying, if you don't come to the hospital, you'll most certainly die, and still insists on not coming in. Smack overdose patients that but act like jerks. Happens so often. Patients will be passed out, not breathing, vomits, has pneumonia in multiple lung lobes, on death's doorstep, but once you resuscitate them, all you get is a middle finger, literally get spit on, and sometimes they'll swing at you, screaming. Not all of them are this bad, but so many of them are. Non-emergent complaints. Our emergency departments get full to the brim with patients. Wait times are long, resources are low. Some patients clog up that system with non-emergent complaints. That should be dealt with in a clinic setting, not the emergency department. Medication refills or their specialist's appointment is too far away and they want to be seen by that specialist that day, or back pain they've had for 50 years that isn't any different today than usual. Overall, it's not bad though. A patient who's even a little appreciative goes a long way in making it feel worthwhile. Being able to actually reassure someone who was just scared over something small, or getting to make a positive impact on someone's life when they have something big, makes it feel worthwhile between a lot of jerks we encounter. My only thought on this is that some too many cases of people being low on their prescription might be an emergency because they might need it to live. I mean, what about drugs for diabetes? I'm pretty sure that's a thing where people need it, right? Med student here, but usually something along the lines of, are you a smoker? Nope. Have you ever smoked? Yes. How long were you smoking for? 2 packs a day for 50 years. When did you give up? 3 days ago. My partner is a doctor. She had 2 answers. First, the doorknob comment. Come for a 15-minute appointment, spend 14 minutes talking about a mild cough. Then, as she goes to leave the room, patient suddenly remembers, oh yeah, and my penis is green and smells strange. Second, having to write a medical certificate and letter for employers that require them if someone takes a day off because they're sick. Waste of everyone's time, in her opinion. Patient stated he has a cold, examined and determined that patient does indeed have a cold. Thanks for wasting my time. When they come in with non-evidence-based, unproven, and sometimes dangerous recommendations from their naturopaths, like broccoli juice cures cancer. According to my nurse girlfriend, when they bring their family member who has some medical training and that family member orders them around. Who does that? Who? You've turned me into an owl. It's not their fault. But where I come from, we have to see 40 to 60 patients in an afternoon. Time is of the essence, and we have nearly 15 minutes to interview, figure out what they have, and tell them what could be done. Because of the time frame during the interview, we need objective answers, something patients avoid like hell. We ask when the pain started, and they say, well, I was at Mary's wedding when it started. I'm thinking, who's Mary? When was it? The 28th. Of which month? I have several other patients, and I don't mean to be rude with this, but I need answers. Come to me and ask me what they could potentially have and then interrupt me because their Google PhD knows better, I guess. Animal doctor here. I hate when clients bring in their pets for a sick exam and decline all diagnostics and treatments. It's one thing if they're financially in a rough spot. I try to help them out as much as I can, but it's another when they say things like, I just don't believe in medicine, or I can fix this with coconut oil, turmeric, essential oils, crystals, and I don't trust any of your advice. I feel like I've done nothing to help their little friend, and I worry about their pet all day. Bonus anger when they want to pay for a toenail trim for $20, and the medicine they've declined is cheaper than that. I've even gotten no's when I try to give them a free trim so that I could send home meds. Not a real doctor, but a dentist here. There are a few things that irk me, but I do realize that people really do not want to come to the dentist, so I try my best to ignore most of it. So the only thing I'll say, without trying to toot my dentist horn here, is that believe it or not, a lot of the things we do in dentistry on a day-to-day basis are actually pretty difficult technically. The fact that we do it so often that it becomes routine does not change that. I realize that patients have no idea what I am doing in their mouth for the most part, but believe me when I say that mistakes within fractions of a millimeter can mean the difference between an amazing result and a catastrophic failure. As such, when patients have either a bad attitude or are not interested in trying to help me, it adds a huge degree of difficulty to something that is already hard enough. People who don't open wide on purpose, even after being asked, or keep trying to sit up and want to rinse constantly, or ones that try to grab my hand when I'm giving an injection or drilling. I'm not asking you to do or not do certain things solely for my own good. It's actually for your own good, so that I can achieve a great result for you and your dental work. And also so that I don't accidentally bury my drill into the side of your tongue or the floor of your mouth while you are squirming around. I've never had a bad time at the dentist, except for the previously stated time where they were like, I'm going to take your wisdom tooth out. I'm like, haha, no you're not. And to expand on that, the only reason I was getting abscesses where my wisdom tooth was is because it was coming in. Now that it's like fully grown in there, it doesn't do anything now. I'd say the general belief many patients have nowadays, that pain is never okay. That being sick and feeling like crap while your body heals is unacceptable. You broke your ankle. I can do lots of things to help you heal and be in less pain, but it's going to hurt. Being pain-free is impossible. You have the flu, you're going to feel like complete butt for 5 to 7 days. Feverish, achy, weak, coughing. Frankly, unless you're seriously ill, you shouldn't be contaminating your community and my waiting room. Go to bed, take Tylenol, ibuprofen, fluids, and wait. But it's not fair. We're in 2020 goddamn 4. Why don't we have flying cars or hoverboards or pills that just make us better already? I want robot arms. I want robot legs. I want to live in a cyberpunk dystopian future. God damn it. I feel like every generation has that. Like my mom's like, we were promised Back to the Future 2015, you know, hoverboards and everything, and now it's like, where's cyberpunk? When's that gonna happen? Not a doctor, but my mother is, so I heard all the stories while growing up. Here are a few things that annoy her. Arriving late to your appointment. If you arrive late and she's already behind and seeing the patient after you, she may ask you to reschedule if it's not an emergency. If you know you're going to be late, call in and let them know. It might save you a trip if the doctor is already behind, or they could tell you to come in anyway. If it's your first appointment, try to arrive at least 15 minutes early. There is going to be paperwork. It's obvious when people come in just looking to score some opiates or pain medication. It's sad and she wants to help, but most or all of those people are just looking to score some drugs, not get help. If for some reason you do not want a female doctor, you should tell the scheduling people when you make your appointment. It's happened a few times where a man would come in and not allow her to touch him due to religious restrictions. You just waste everyone's time with that. Don't just stop taking your meds because you start to feel better. Oftentimes the meds are what makes you feel better, so if you stop them, you will be back to square one. Some medications need to be tapered down so it can be dangerous to go cold turkey. If you do not speak English or are calling in for someone who does not know English, please let the staff know when they schedule the appointment. The clinic is required to pay for an interpreter for you. If they show up and cannot communicate, there is not much that can be done. If this is the case, please show up because they have to pay the interpreter even if you don't show up. Pay your bills. The billing department will work with you. If you have a certain number of unpaid bills, you will not be seen. Some guy once hired one of those services that claim to reduce your medical bills by negotiating for you. That sort of thing only really works with hospitals when you don't have recurring visits. The hospital might settle for getting a lower amount rather than getting even less by selling it to a collection agency. But a clinic that you have to go back and forth to every 6 months or so will just fire you as a patient. Don't be a prick. The doctors and nurses are doing their best to help you and deserve respect. They do not have to see you, so don't go treating them like some minimum wage cashier. You should also treat cashiers with respect. Don't try and walk all over them. My mother has 5 patients who were repeatedly rude to the front end and phone personnel. There is a section in your account where the staff can put notes for everyone to see when they pull up your billing info. If you're a prick to them, it will show up there, and you will find everyone much less accommodating. At what moment did you realize your date was a horrible person? Met a guy on a dating site. He asked if I had a single friend to bring on our first meetup since his cousin was in town and wanted to come along. Sure, whatever. My friend and I were stoked and we spent time getting all cute and stuff. We were 18 or 19. The guy comes. My date says he's low on gas, so I'd need to drive. Okay. I drive a 2-door coupe, but whatever. I ask where we were going for dinner. He replies, Jack in the Box. Okay. We get there and the cousin orders 20 tacos and the rest of us order, and my date finds that he has no money in his wallet. I pay. The cousin eats all 20 tacos. I proceed to text another friend with a frantic help text. She sends me an address of a hookah lounge and says to go there. There's a group of friends there, and maybe it'll be less awkward if it's a group thing. We go. Some random dude tells my date to shotgun me. Having never done hookah before, I didn't know what this was. Date proceeds to blow hookah smoke into my mouth and try to make out with me. I decide it's time to go home and we leave. Oh, on the car ride home, we find out that the cousin is married. There wasn't a second date with either couple. That's right, believe it or not, men also use dating apps for free food and just to leech off of someone. Decided to try dating a gamer girl. She played a lot of games I liked, but she only had one dimension. Games. I tried to talk to her about college, work, family, anything. It all came back to games. About an hour in, she finally told me she left college, quit work, and lives off a portion of her grandmother's pension to sit inside all day and play games. When she asked me what I'd do if she got knocked up, and then proceeded to tell me that her mom got herself intentionally pregnant to hook her dad. Noped right out of there. She was looking at me as a wallet. Not necessarily, but probably. I was at Cal Expo with this girl I crushed hard on during homeschool, and we were sitting together and I felt like maybe we could be a thing. If so, she would be my first and I could then brag to my friends about my beautiful girlfriend. Then building up things, I wanted to kiss her, so after her forcing it out of me that I want to kiss, she says, I can't give you that, I'll think about it, leaving me with my hopes up, and then she leaves because it's getting dark. The next day, I'm excited to see her at Cal Expo again, but she's with her friend and she ditched me for around 5 hours, and I'm just moping around. No money, no girl, sadness, and then I go home. About 2 weeks of me trying to unsuccessfully contact her, her grandmother, whom she lives with, comes up to me during church and tells me that her granddaughter liked me but said that I was too short and she already had a boyfriend. She had decided to lead me on and then basically give me a giant F you, shorty, even though she was the shorter one. I'm taken and you can't do crap. Needless to say, I was devastated. Now, I'm not going to call you a liar or anything, but there is a chance that this girl wasn't stringing you along and maybe you're just bad at communication. Now, I only say that because some things in this little story are quite frankly just lacking in confirmation or detail. Like, did you make it clear this was a date? Because I wouldn't call this stringing along. This sounds like possibility, and then it's not really, and then there's stringing along, like telling you over and over again, like I could be with you, extenuating circumstances to why I can't be with you, over and over for days, for weeks. That's stringing along. This just sounds like pretty minor to me. Blind date my kid sister set up between her coworker and me. When I arrive at her door, instead of introducing herself or even starting out with hi, the first words out of her mouth were, I've just found out I have chlamydia earlier today, so don't expect any SX later. Should have just turned right around there because the day kind of went downhill from there. Impossible though it may seem. Raucous fake laughter, knocking over a very expensive bottle of wine on the next table as she dashed for the bathroom to retch, hitting a waiter's pants and shoes en route. Then after I cut the date short, she passed out in the car and nearly had to be carried bodily up the step to her door. A week later, she asked my sister why I hadn't called. I would say why did she even go on the date in the first place, but I guess she needed a win, something pleasant. I mean, like, this lady sounds like a nightmare. I thought it was when she would try to one-up anything I said by mentioning she managed a bookstore in an airport. The horrible was sealed when she thought it would be cool to talk about screwing her future brother-in-law right before the ceremony. She said she only did him once, so it was cool. I didn't think so, so I told her she was messed up in the head and she could probably find a book to help with that. Frickin' based. I went on a date with a guy who was in the army. At the time, he was back from his second tour and decided to take the GI Bill for school. He dropped many details about how he was chosen to guard the Saudi royal family, wore designer suits with military-grade artillery underneath. You get the idea. What made him a horrible person? He bragged about being in Afghanistan was a cakewalk, and it's nothing like what it is portrayed as on the news. He went on to tell me that due to his rank, uniformed soldiers were his protection to and from. He laughed how he would give one of his escorts the worst seat in the convoy or just make fun of them because he felt like it. Lastly, he told me how when his tour was over, he helped himself to a karaoke machine and a bunch of Xbox games because I didn't have to pay for that crap. Sounds like a major issue of ego and self-importance. I went on a date with this maths teacher. He was loud, but I figured I could look past that. We were talking about exercising at the time. I was actually about 30 pounds heavier than I am today. Out of nowhere, he says, "Oh, you're not that fat." Gee, thanks. I'm overly polite, so I kind of just ride out the date, and at the end, I dropped him back off at his car, and I was looking straight ahead and had both hands on the wheel and said goodnight. Then this guy had the audacity to ask for a kiss. I kind of fluffed it and just said, I don't kiss on the first date. Well, a woman who'll kiss on the very first date is usually a hussy, and a woman who'll kiss on the second time out is anything but fussy. But a woman who'll kiss on the third time around, head in the clouds, feet on the ground, she's the girl he's glad he's found, she's his shaboopy. My brother took one girl out on a date to a fancy restaurant one time. At the end of the meal, my brother asked why a bottle of wine on the drinks menu was so expensive, $400 a glass, and the waiter went to go fetch it to show him. It turns out it was a collector's edition of wine that came from Revolutionary-era France and was so expensive because not many bottles survived during that time and came with a certificate of authenticity when you ordered it. My brother found the story interesting, but just asked for the check and declined to order the $400 wine. The girl he was with got mad that he wasn't willing to buy her a glass of $400 wine and got up and stormed out the restaurant, saying that a real man would buy a woman what she wants. It's the origin of me and my brother's inside joke where we call anything outrageously expensive French wine. I have heard too many of these stories where it's like take someone to date at dinner and then they order a really expensive thing and just reveal themselves to be a massive jerk and a user. She told me she cheated on an ex-fiancé who lived out of state at the time with another guy because she got lonely. This was on the first date, in the first 10 minutes. I can believe that, I just don't believe that they told you in the first 10 minutes. Not me, but one of my guy friends who I originally met as the boyfriend of one of my high school friends told me that she would tell him bad things about me and our other friends, saying we're buttholes, etc., especially about her ex. She showed him a letter her ex wrote back, then thinking she can get the boyfriend to side with her more about how pathetic her ex is, and in it, he was spilling his heart out to her and forgiving her for all the bad things she did. That's when the boyfriend realized that the ex was actually a really nice guy and that she was the butthole of the group. Took her to prom and she told me as we pulled up, just because we're each other's dates doesn't mean we have to dance exclusively with each other. We went in and she left me at the door. After an hour of not seeing her, I left her there and got drunk at home. Good on you, lad. 1 year into the relationship when she became controlling and abusive. 5 years later, still just putting up with it because I need someone to cuddle occasionally and I have no friends to support me in a breakup and don't know any girls to even begin thinking about dating. Get out of that relationship right now and use all the reasons that you weren't going to get out of the relationship to motivate you to find those things that you need. All it takes is to put yourself out there a little bit. I was wearing a shirt with Han Solo on it, hoping it'd be a good entry-level nerdiness icebreaker. He said, "Oh, I like your shirt." "Oh, okay, that's good." "Yeah, I've seen that guy live like 4 times. "Live?" "Yeah, Bon Jovi." Wait, no, it's not Bon Jovi. Are you messing with me? Oh, you're right. It's that guy from the movie. There were several movies. Space Wars, right? It started when she arrived early for our date. I was getting in the shower when she texted me to let me know that she was there. I let her in and explained to her that I was going to take a shower real quick. So I'm in the bathroom and have the shower running when I realize I forgot my towel. I go out of the bathroom to grab a towel and find her knuckle deep in my daughter's piggy bank. I made her leave and decided to delete my dating profile. Well, time to do what I do on every first date, arrive early and then steal from their children. Tinder date. Met her at a coffee shop, tried to recruit me into a multi-level marketing scheme. Since I wasn't completely alpha, I listened to her entire sales pitch before leaving. This happened to 2 of my dad's close friends with the same woman 30 years apart. My dad told me this story a few weeks ago. My dad's best friend took a woman to a Detroit Tigers game 30 years ago where she proceeded to get belligerent drunk and was getting into shouting matches with some of the guys sitting in front of them. She kept turning to my dad's friend, expecting him to defend her crappy behavior and fight these men he had no beef with. He was mortified, but hey, it was a Tigers game in 1984. What self-respecting Detroiter would leave? After the game, he dropped her off at home, and she cussed him out for not fighting those guys for her the whole way home. They never spoke again. Last year, a mutual friend of my dad and his best friend had gotten a divorce and was on the online dating market. He matched with this woman around his age who seemed nice enough, so they decided to meet for drinks and billiards at a local pool bar. According to him, she started drinking heavily for a woman in her early 50s right from the get-go, and wouldn't you know it, she started a number of verbal disputes with several male customers. Notice a pattern? She looks at my dad's friend, who has gone from confused at her behavior to utterly shocked, as if he's going to swoop in and defend her from these brutes. He apologizes to the men and says he's got no issue with them, pays his and his date's tab, and left. She probably had to get a cab home, but he told my dad he didn't care. She's a grown woman, and he's getting too old to deal with such childish bullcrap. When he told this story to my dad and the friend from the first story, they asked to see a picture of her. He showed them them her online dating profile, and my dad's other friend erupts in laughter at the coincidence. Not only did they have nearly identical catastrophic first dates, they were both with the same woman 30 years apart. Met up with a blind date. Nice looking girl, we did our introductions, and then she asked what I do for a living. I told her, and then I asked what she did for a living, and then she says, it doesn't matter, because I'm the girl, and guys are supposed to pay for the bill anyway. She wasn't joking at all. I smiled, had a sensible chuckle, and told her to have a nice day, noped the heck out of there, and I believe she called me a couple of names as I walked off. Quickest date ever, it lasted all of 50 seconds. I've definitely had at least 5 girls tell me they flaked on another guy to go on a date with me because I asked after she already made plans with him, but she thought I was cooler and better looking. Sounds cool at first, then you realize how many times you've been flaked on and see how heartless girls can be on a whim. I probably would have just said, how long will it be until someone cooler and better looking than me comes along? And no, I'm not speaking from experience there because there is no one cooler and better looking than me. We were at the local mall and a couple walked by holding hands. One was white, the other was black. My date stopped and turns around to watch the couple as they walk away. He looks to me and says, "Man, I will never get used to that. N-word shouldn't be dating white women." I'm going to take this opportunity to say everyone should watch the film Look Who's Coming to Dinner with Sidney Poitier. I don't know if they've remade it or anything. Watch the original version though, it's a classic. When I Google searched him later, just out of curiosity, and found out he had been arrested for trying to run down his pregnant girlfriend with his SUV. This was after she had gotten a restraining order against him. I used to be a good church-going guy, and I once asked a girl from church if she would like to go to a hockey game and grab some pizza. I borrowed my mom's car for the date, picked her up, and we went for supper, then to the game. We lived about 35 to 40 kilometers away in another town. The seats were my father's season tickets. If you were to ask me, I would say they were not bad seats on the aisle, but also nobody beside us, a railing to rest our feet on, and a clear view of the ice from one end with nobody in front of us. We were first row on the second level. 20 minutes, I repeat, 20 minutes into the game, she says, if I'd known the seats were going to be this bad, I would have gone out with my real friends. I was so angry and hurt that I got up from my seat and said something along the lines of, well, you should get in touch with your real friends soon because you're going to need a ride home. Then I walked out. She tried to stop me, but I ignored her and walked away. I saw her a few other times, but her attempt at an apology was ignored. I'm still bitter, and it has been 21 years. What are you into? Video games, books, music, politics. I love talking about politics. Oh, yeah, I was listening to Rush Limbaugh on the drive here. I'm only saying this on a passing glance on Google at who Rush Limbaugh is. I don't know if they have any more extreme opinions about certain topics, but hey, I'm just gonna say this. If you're conservative, that doesn't make you a bad person. Stop assuming that people are bad people because they have different politics to you. And yes, the same applies to Democrats. People seriously need to start judging each other based on the actions that they take. When he talked about stuffing hookers and turning them into lamps, thanks, OK Cupid. Or the other one was when he started saying Hitler was actually misunderstood and that wouldn't it be hilarious if he firebombed my car? 0.0, I was a bait crazy 19-year-old. That's all I have to say about that. This just happened to me the other day. First time meeting someone new for drinks. For a few hours, the conversation is fine. I'm liberal and I don't want to get too far in before finding out how much we have in common. The conversation turns to the first GOP debate. I tell her that I like Bernie Sanders, obviously not in the debate. She likes Rubio. In an effort to convince me we have much in common, she begins by assuring me she has many gay friends. Okay then. Explaining why she's conservative, she says, but after working hard all day, when I go to get my nails done, I don't need to be waiting behind all these African American women with all their babies they can't afford on their Obama phones. It was such a starkly rude, offensive, and ignorant remark. I kind of thought she was making a joke. Do people really say Obama phone? I don't know if this makes her a horrible person, but I found it really offensive. He told me about how his brother hit a girl walking on the side of the road. It was dark, no streetlights, she was wearing dark clothing, the girl died. Think she was about 15. He was angry because his brother didn't get compensated for the damage done to his car. The conversation went a little bit like, dude, a family lost their daughter. Yeah, and that's sad, but what about my brother's car? This was over the span of 4 dates. She told me that her daughter's father only had supervised visits. Later in the conversation, she told me the reason his visits had to be supervised, because when the kid was 4 weeks old, she let him. And this piece of crap, this reprehensible piece of crap first-time father, didn't support the baby's head properly. According to her, she insisted he was only allowed supervised visits for 4 years, for something like 3 hours per month. I don't remember the exact duration, but I know she said it was a period of so many hours per month. But then she told me, kids don't need a father anyway. I've raised my daughter pretty much alone since she was 5 months old, if not before, which she knew. She also hinted that she wanted more kids, but without explicitly saying so. A sperm donor would do. I'm pretty sure the stuff about the guy being a reprehensible piece of crap is supposed to be sarcastic. We were in line at a drive-through fast food joint for an after-bar snack. When the food wasn't ready the moment we drove up to the window, she reached over and honked the horn at them. I was mortified. Back in the days of MySpace, I scoped out this girl's page before meeting up for lunch to make sure she didn't have any screaming red flags. I made sure to reiterate that it was a strictly platonic meetup, and she agreed. She kept hitting on me the entire time. I tried to change the subject to small talk, and she mentioned that she was a single child from absentee parents, blah blah, pity party. These were all lies, since her very public MySpace page showed wonderful family outings with very seemingly involved parents and a handful of siblings. I avoided her around campus the rest of my college career, and she could never figure out why. Not as bad as some, but when I was 17, I met a guy at the farmer's market who was older, 23, and we decided to go out for coffee during the day. So we met up, had a nice chat. Afterwards, we went for a walk and he tried to kiss me. After politely rejecting him, he kept trying. I know I should have been firm with him and told him that it made me uncomfortable, but I was afraid to upset him. We had taken his car to a nearby park, and we were somewhat alone. I didn't return his phone calls or anything after that. It wasn't necessarily one moment, but a series of god-awful events that tipped me off. So, guy asks me out on a date as a present for my birthday. Yeah, he was my birthday present. Should have known right then. We go out to lunch, I get stuck paying for the meal and most of his, and am told that I am being kind of stingy with the tip. I put $4 down and my sandwich was only $8, but okay, whatever. So he asked me to go to a movie after, but he doesn't want to drive because his truck is bad on gas. I can't drive because my parents won't let me give people rides. He doesn't care, so he tries to pressure me into driving him anyway. I won't, so he throws a fit and gets into his car. So I get into his truck and, being the pushover that I was at the time, apologize that he had to drive. He huffs and goes, "Well, you know what? The least that you could do is give me gas money." This dude asked me out and basically complained the entire time that I was a pain in the butt. I can't remember if there were worse people than this, but already the fact that they're like, "I'm your present, my darling," is like, ugh. He pushed back the time of our date by an hour at the last minute. When I got to the restaurant, I walked inside and he was nowhere to be found. I called him. Turns out he was at a bar down the road and told me to just come there instead. I didn't know exactly where it was, and he gave me bad directions. When I got there, he had already eaten. He spent most of the night watching the TV at the bar and ignoring everything I said. This girl I was with started talking about her birthday when she told me that she's had bikinis and muscles at her birthday parties since she was 10. When I asked her about 10-year-olds being ripped, she responded with, "Well, yeah, I don't hang out with the losers." I laughed, and then she told me that she was serious and that she only hung out with cool people. I was like, nah. What? What was banned at your school and why? Flipping water bottles. They had ledges for windows above the doors and people were throwing water bottles up there and getting them stuck. So if you flip a water bottle, you get in trouble. That's stupid. Not just the punishment for it, but just the fact that people do that for entertainment. Animals. Somebody thought it would be funny to organize an unofficial bring your pet to school day as a senior prank, and the result was that everybody with allergies nearly died. Manga. Because in the opinion of the vice principal, it was all smut. That is so lame. This wasn't at my school, but at the rival middle school across town. They put a ban on the word kill. Teachers couldn't even use it in their lectures. Apparently, someone or a few people told one girl to delete herself, and she got triggered and went to guidance complaining about it. Then the principal put a ban on the word kill. I understand banning swear words. I understand being like, hey, don't say, like, poop or fornicate in the swearing way, because I swear a fair bit. I try not to, because it's not very classy. Cooking is an impractical art. Today, everyone can just buy pre-made meals and no one has time to cook, or they could be smart and hire a personal chef. This boiled my blood. Who the heck says this? Cooking is so a practical art. Way to go, jackhole principal, or whatever you call him. Teaching children that laziness is the key to society, that it can just be done for you. So wait, like cooking was like banned at the school? I mean, children shouldn't really be cooking at school because all kinds of things could go wrong unless under supervision. Like imagine if that was the general rule, school dinners consisting of, I don't know, cold pre-packaged pigs in a blanket or something, or like, I don't know, sushi meal packs that you can get from the store. Overall though, yeah, that is kind of telling kids like, yeah, be lazy, don't learn how to cook or anything like that. I love cooking. I went to Catholic school from kindergarten to 8th grade. Most makeup could only wear mascara and had to be upperclassmen. Those finger fortune tellers because it was related to witchcraft, but literally Catholicism is the most superstitious out of the demographics. Like, we bury a statue of Joseph to help sell our house. Now, is that not also witchcraft? Any sweatshirts that didn't have the school's logo, purses? I mean, it was Catholic school, so there's not much to get banned anyways. I wouldn't say Catholicism is the most superstitious. I'm pretty sure all religions, if you look enough into them, have really weird rules and at least believe in some form of superstition or just some absolute bollocks. I can't possibly remember all of the dumb rules, but in middle school we weren't allowed to wear hats, carry backpacks, leave the cafeteria during lunch, or walk back to our lockers to pick up something we forgot at the end of the day. After we'd already walked to the front of the school, they were afraid we were going to be doing illegal substance deals back there. This was an affluent suburb. I was once sitting in the front hallway waiting for my friend who I was going to hang out with after school. Eventually, she, a white girl, came out, but then realized she'd forgotten her binder, so she begged to be allowed to go back and get it. They begrudgingly let her. Then, a few minutes later, a black boy also asked to go back to his locker, and they said no. One of the middle schools I went to banned all backpacks that weren't either mesh or clear plastic, which led to crappy backpacks that had to be replaced every couple of months, because adults had to be able to make sure that you weren't carrying anything illegal or had weapons. The school had a problem with a couple of rival gangs, and having nearly 3,000 kids packed into a school designed for 1,000 at the most, so part of it made sense, but the backpacks we were allowed were so utterly pieces of crap because they were so cheaply made. My high school got rid of soda machines, which if you dug up a yearbook from 6 or so years ago, there were pictures of those soda things you find at gas stations and most restaurants, and there used to be a vending machine that sold candy and soda. So they banned students from bringing in baked goods to celebrate birthdays as well as candy for health reasons. The utterly hilarious thing about these bans was that we had what was called the senior store, where candy, soda, energy drinks, and just about everything banned for health reasons could be obtained. So they didn't ban it, they just made it that you had to pay them for the stuff that you wanted. That kind of makes sense. I mean, I'm pretty sure on a lot of those vending machines, it's like people come and collect the money from them. I'm not entirely sure about the logistics of it, but I'm pretty sure the school doesn't own those machines really, which would make even more sense as to why they would just set up a store for you to get these things, because if someone damages those machines, I'm pretty sure the school has to like do something about it rather than the people who manufactured it. Yeah, nothing here sounds terribly bad, especially when it's like, oh, the area is known for like rival gangs and stuff, which at least a few, maybe more kids could potentially be a part of. So nothing here is like egregious really to me, but yeah, as someone attending the school, I can see why it's like, man, this is annoying. My middle school banned anything that had artificial scents. This includes body spray, perfume, cologne, scented deodorant, and scented hand sanitizer. This was in 8th grade. We never could put on sprays during school because some kids would go overboard, but with the addition of the new rule, we couldn't even wear it to school. One girl said, "Can I wash my hair with scented shampoo?" The teacher replied with, "Yes." She then asked, "Then why can't I wear perfume?" The teacher had no idea what to say and blamed it on the handbook. No, yeah, I kind of get that one because I remember being in high school and people spraying way too much deodorant and guys with like asthma being like, "Oh, you're killing me!" Counter-Strike 1.6. They initially thought deleting and reformatting every PC in the school would help, but it just kept coming since most of us had it on our flash drives. It got serious to a point that a kid would be suspended if he was caught playing it. Maybe it's because I'm a gamer, but I always kind of thought that, I don't know, you could have video games in school, it could work if you just placed a heavy rule on it, an asterisk, there is a time and place for this sort of thing. I think games can be used to help educate people in things like teamwork, working together. It can also be a good way for kids to find common ground with each other. I don't know, that's just my thought on it. I'm probably wrong, I'm not a teacher. That, and I am too used to, at least in my experience of high school, people having an opportunity to do something cool and then squandering it and ruining it for everyone else. This is actually a personal one and it applied more to a class than an entire school, where we used to go up to the hills for a certain class and we were learning how to accurately read maps, and we would go off in groups, and one group decided, and it was full of jerks and one kind of semi-annoying guy because no one got to pick their groups, and they decided to desert this semi-annoying guy, in which we came back, it was like, "Where is he?" We left him, and then we had to go find him, and when we got back to the bus, we were told, "Yeah, we're never doing this again, you've squandered this opportunity, why did you do that, you're stupid." Water guns. I did my last 2 years of high school in a Catholic school in Miami. During my senior year, I found my younger brother's water gun in my backpack. No idea why it was there, but anyone with multiple siblings know you find random things in random places. So I decided to fill it up with water, pull my sweater's sleeves, yes, it was 90-something degrees outside, but indoors was Arctic, over the water gun so you couldn't see it, and proceeded to walk the halls while randomly shooting it in the air, confusing people as I went. I got the bright idea to start actually shooting my friends in the face, because why not? I somehow had sniper-ready skills and was able to get you down the hole right in the eye, which became a standing challenge to all the guys since I'm a chick, and damn that Latino machismo and Catholic upbringing. The next day, a couple of other seniors brought in little water guns and attacked people. The following day, a few more, to the point of the seniors running up and down the halls, stairs, jumping into classrooms, hiding around corners just for the perfect shot. The underclassmen thought they could get in on the action until we declared that if a senior caught you with one, we could confiscate it and then drench you with it. We were able to get away with our water war for exactly 1 week before the buzzkill dean of students announced that anyone caught with a water gun would be suspended. Licorice. We would buy the licorice from the tuck shop, the type that had 3 or 4 strings together and be long enough to swing. We would run around during lunch swatting each other with them. One day they just stopped selling and stocking them. That's when we started using those weeds with the big bindies on the end again, the ones that would dig and get stuck in your skin. Wearing red or blue shirts. I grew up in an area that was gang infested. It was so bad that some of the kids in elementary school and middle school were a part of those gangs. They also had locker checks for illegal substances and weapons. High security with fences in school grounds. This was in the late 90s to early aughts. I remember in elementary school they banned Happy Crack, which was basically just a bag of anything powdery and sweet mixed together. Go to school with a few packets of Kool-Aid, Pixie Sticks, and sugar, no one would care. Mix it together in a bag and it'd be a problem. Everyone would just eat the stuff. All it took was that one kid who snorted it to ruin the fun for everyone. In hindsight, it was probably a lot better for my health that the kid snorted that crap.
Amen to that, brother.
I was from an all-girls Catholic secondary school, and in our second year, the discipline master imposed a ridiculous no hugging for more than 30 seconds rule. Not sure why they started the rule, but it was rumored that they caught 2 girls getting it on in one of the bathroom stalls. Not surprising, all the girls knew it was a thing and were cool with it, and relationships were common, like any other school. Being an all-girls school, we were all super comfy with each other, and hugging your friends was common. So despite the rule, we'd purposely hug each other in front of the teachers and just stay there, casually counting to 30. Pennies. Pennies were banned at my school. We had this weird kid we all called Crazy Larry. Every week freshman year, this kid Larry would leave pennies in random places. In lockers, on desks, lunch trays, you name it. This persisted for 2.5 years. Junior year rolled around, and evidently a member of one of Larry's math class so happened to go to the bathroom right after Larry had left to do so. What he saw was almost unimaginable. Larry had been stuffing pennies by the roll up his butt. He would then go throughout his day and leave pennies anywhere he saw fit. Find a penny money, pick it up all day long, you'll have good luck. I've lost my faith in that now. Thanks, Larry. Crazy Bones. Tiny collectible plastic figures of random things like sharks, aliens, and sludge monsters. This was in primary school, aged 7 to 11 for those of you not from the UK, and they were insanely popular with pretty much every kid in this age group in my area. Kids being kids, it wasn't long before we were stealing them from each other, which it seemed like the teachers could mostly put up with, but even so, a few whole school assemblies were held over this. However, the last straw was one particular bullying incident where an 8-year-old had one shoved up his butt and had to go to the hospital. Letters were sent out to parents, and every school in the country banned us from taking them into school. Ah, those were the good old days. Goddamn, I remember Crazy Bones. I thought this was just kind of nice. I was like, oh yeah, I remember Crazy Bones. They were great. Used to flick them at each other, like line them up like little bowling pins and stuff, and see how many you could lock down by flicking one at them, and then nope, up the butt it goes. Goddamn, I wasn't expecting that. Now I'm just wondering, why the hell did the school go ban the Crazy Bones? It's the Crazy Bones' fault. Like, I'm sure that boy got reprimanded, sent to a juvenile detention center, removed from public school, as they probably should be. But why you gotta hate on the Crazy Bones? Pokemon cards were banned around 2003 because people were getting into fights, stealing them from each other, and trading them for more money than kids should have. I went to school in Jordan, so naturally we're all businessmen. After they banned it, a sort of black market emerged with code words and dealers that went by pseudonyms. We'd meet the guys in charge in between the trees in a hidden spot, and that's where the exchange would happen. It became a sort of mafia, a mafia run by 11-year-olds. Pogs, specifically the slammers, keenies we called them. People in our school would sharpen the metal ones in metalworking and technology class and throw them at each other. Toilet doors, to allow teachers to check if students were doing illegal substances in said toilets. I don't go to the school anymore, but my youngest sister says they are now banned from going inside at break times. Now, my school did have a serious illegal substance issue for a few years that ended up with 2 kids committing self-deletion after getting caught by their parents. After someone put Halo Combat Evolved on the network drive and it started to rival Microsoft Word for most used software in the building, they had to ban that. Unfortunately, the person responsible for making the announcement had the computer literacy of a mountain goat. So the official rule was something like, don't be downloading Halo websites on the computers. I don't know how long ago this person might have been referring to this, but like, goddamn, kids are so lucky nowadays to have a school where it's like, oh, at least your computers can play frickin' Halo or something. We were lucky enough if Happy Wheels frickin' worked on a good day on the school computers. Nipple cripples. A weird dude in my class got a lot of laughs by letting people give him nipple cripples. Apparently, after repeated and increasingly hard nipple cripples, the connective tissues behind his nipple broke. So this guy could literally stretch his nipples 5 to 6 inches off his chest. Obviously, being a teenager and a weird one at that, he went around showing everyone and their mother his new ability. He got warned about it several times, and the final straw was when he was seen by the administration with an equally weird girl sucking his nipples 5 to 6 inches off his chest. Oh my god. They immediately banned nipple cripples, but there was really no need. We were all pretty scarred by what we had seen from this kid. I can't believe I'm about to do this, but for those of you asking what this looked like, the best I can describe it would be an upside-down funnel. When he would pull on the nipple, all the loose skin surrounding it would come off of his chest, and a sort of cone-shaped base would comprise the first 3 inches, and the rest did pretty much look like a penis nipple. It was probably a decent 3 to 4 inch diameter circle around his nipples of broken connective tissue, so I promise you, it came off his chest a solid 5 to 6 inches over 3 sports seasons during 3 years of high school. I can also tell you that it got to that point aggressively. He was literally tugging on that nip in the locker room every day, stretching it out, but who am I to judge, I guess? You could only kind of tell that it was messed up before he would pull on it. I'm not sure if that would eventually repair itself or just sort of sagged in the grossest way possible as he gets older. I hope you're happy now. I'm going to have PTSD nightmares tonight. Now, I only call them nipple cripples, which is what we call them in England, or at least that's what a lot of people I know call them in England, because they were calling them TT twisters, and I'm pretty sure TT, if you know what I'm trying to say, there is a no-no word on YouTube now because of all the goddamn rules of censorship and stuff. Google.
Our high school had some kind of contract with this really crappy school-appropriate search engine called NetTrekker. They banned using Google in school because it wasn't scholarly. Only NetTrekker was allowed. They tried extending this to beyond the school. They wanted us to use only NetTrekker for internet searches outside of school and sent home a pamphlet about internet rules outside the classroom. They said that the students shouldn't have Android phones. I got a referral to having a Moto X smartphone. This was in 2015. Two-way hallways. Sounds crazy, right? The principal and his staff thought that it'd be a smart idea to have one-way hallways in order to cut down student traffic. If your locker was right around the corner and you had to go against the traffic in order to get there, you had to walk all the way around. If you passed your class on the way to your locker, you had to make 2 circles around the building. This significantly increased tardiness and write-ups. Terrible idea. Maybe I would make an okay principal. I wouldn't make a decision that stupid. At least I say that, but ultimate power corrupts absolutely, and as we are all aware, I'm sure, there is no power quite so ultimate as that of a school principal. Looney Tunes characters on your clothes. It was the 90s at a crappy school. Bionicles. We would smash them together, and whoever's helmet fell off first was the loser. So many bloody hands in 4th grade. Any liquid not in a clear plastic bottle, and then the only liquid we could have was water. The ban was because a girl in my grade got caught with vodka in a clear plastic bottle. Everyone in my school never understood the ban because vodka is clear like water, and the only reason the teacher even caught on to her was because another dumb kid was joking around about alcohol, and the idiot with the vodka threw the bottle away in the garbage next to the teacher's desk. Sack whacking. Guys would hit each other in the balls as a prank or whatever. Apparently it was causing a big enough problem that the entire school had to attend an assembly where the deputy principal informed everyone there has been a large outbreak of sack whacking. Entire school was laughing so hard, even the deputy, who was a really strict and uptight guy, started laughing his butt off. We were also banned from playing with large balls, basketballs, soccer balls, etc. at the same assembly. That was also received very well. Yogurt eating contests were immediately banned at my high school when an overzealous football lineman vomited about a quart of yogurt and then attempted to re-eat the yogurt to win the contest. Domino vomit effect throughout the cafeteria. Now hold on a second. What all of you may be thinking, and what the person who witnessed this may be thinking as well, is this guy is disgusting. I say, this young man has exactly what we need to take us to state, people! Candy necklaces at my middle school. One day a couple of my friends came into the playground before school started with a candy necklace each. We immediately got everyone's attention after we all demanded to know where they got them and how much they cost from the corner shop down the street in 10p as I recall. 1 or 2 others said they might go and get one for themselves before school started. That might go turned into them sprinting to the shop once one kid figured out how to weaponize them, holding one piece of candy between their teeth, stretching forward the elastic and biting down. It would catapult pieces of candy at whatever it was aimed at. That morning, a few kids bought a candy necklace each and played a game of firing bits at each other. The next morning, all 400 kids that attended that school were engaged in all-out necklace war. Every single one of us must have had at least one and our own technique for maximizing the firing rate. After doing our best recreation of trench warfare all morning and having the kind of fun that only comes with an entire playground full of kids all playing the same game, we were all ushered into the assembly hall to be told that candy necklaces were now banned. Nobody lost an eye, just in case you were wondering. I think I really vaguely remember people doing that with candy necklaces as well, but I don't think it ever caught on big enough that it became something that got banned. Yu-Gi-Oh, Magic, and Pokemon cards. Some of the kids at school started trading and selling them during lunch, but it got so bad as the kids were actually selling stolen cards they got from other students. My friend was swirly one morning for his deck, and later that day he saw a kid with his Dark Magician card. He knew it was his because he had a tendency to chew the ends of his cards. The teachers put a stop to all of it, including playing the card games and bringing them on school grounds. And here I am once again just thinking to myself, what would really happen if you just removed the children from the situation that were causing all of the problems? Would perhaps many children be deprived of a proper education? Maybe. In middle school, they banned the jersey of a Japanese baseball player on the Chicago Cubs. The vice principal believed that Fukudome was actually a joke, and he believed it said, "F you, do me." True story.
Why did that teacher get fired from your school? My freshman basketball coach, who was also a freshman football coach, got his 18-year-old senior girlfriend pregnant. Next year, the varsity basketball coach paid for all the basketball costs with his company and took all the fundraising money as reimbursement. People were not happy. This isn't so much why he got fired, but what he did when he got fired. So, a male teacher at my high school, call him Mr. M. Mr. M had worked at my high school for 30 plus years. He taught my eldest sister even, who is now in her 40s. He was like a founder of the place, in his own mind anyway. Mr. M, who has always been a long-time council member, so the community has always held him in high regard, minus his students. Ask anyone who has been taught by this man any time over those 30 years, and they will all tell you that he is the most dirty, sexist, racist, misogynistic slimeball you'll ever meet. Examples. Witnessed him tell a 15-year-old girl her legs go all the way up. Witnessed him force a dyslexic kid in our class to read aloud, laugh at him, then ask if he was mentally impaired. Witnessed him tell a kid from a low-income family that he could never afford the shoes he was wearing. Dude used to always wear really, really short shorts and sit with his legs wide open, so there was that imagery I'm sure many of my classmates were exposed to. Anyway, it was 2015, I think, maybe 2014. The government announced a few budget cuts here and there, and a few schools across the country were affected. My school was one of them, and in turn had to fire 2 teachers. One teacher was retiring at the end of the year anyway, so they put their hand up to take one of the positions, but there was still one more teacher that needed to be let go of. After months of delegation, kids complaining about all of their least favorite teachers, you name it, it was decided that Mr. M was to be let go. His work mostly focused on the council anyway, and he had reduced his teaching hours to part-time, so it made sense. But this is the weird part. Second to last day of the school year, during an award ceremony, a woman bursts through the doors mid-ceremony yelling, "There's a classroom on fire! Surprise, surprise! Whose classroom was it? Mr. M's. For some weird reason also, he had managed to park his car right up next to his classroom. Like, this wasn't a driveway where his car was parked. He never ever parked it there. No one put their cars there. Kids would damage them, but of course it too just happened to catch on fire as well. Not long after, he emerged wailing and yelling about all his valuables that were still in the class, claiming a student had done it, etc. Like, no. All the students were conveniently in the assembly hall. He had no reason to even be at the school that day, but for some reason, he was hanging around. Everything about the whole situation was very hush-hush. However, it's a small town and people talk. He 100% did that crap to try and get a reimbursement from his job loss and his demotion in the council. He was then escorted off of school grounds and just lost the overall respect of the community. Sounds like a pretty unpleasant guy, and I don't really get how he thought he'd get away with that with the timing as well as just the motive. The motive was there. 2 different teachers within 2 years of graduating high school. One young male teacher was caught Snapchatting a pic of his crotch to an underage high school student. He was my AP Chem teacher and had major creep vibes, but he was that cute science teacher. He did some time and he's now a real estate agent. The other one, a football coach, stole a student's misplaced expensive watch and pawned it. The student had reported it stolen, so he was arrested. Gave an entire class of seniors a D- in math because they all had terrible homework. Was also the math teacher for the Year 8 accelerated learners, the smarter ones. Unluckily, I happened to be in said class. I had trigonometry with algebra assignments and worked my butt off, studying and writing hours each day. I handed it in knowing 100% I was going to get a good mark. I had it peer-reviewed by my older brother, older friends, and a grade above, and even teachers. I got a C. I asked why he gave me this mark. His reply? I couldn't read your writing. I directed his attention to the typed copy attached on the back. He proceeded to tell me to stop making excuses and that it's okay to be mentally impaired. He did similar things with nearly half the class. Pretty much all the boys. F you, Mr. T. Now hear me out. What if? Just what if everyone that you showed it to is also mentally impaired? I'm joking. Also, don't say that about Mr. T. I know you're talking about another individual, but I pity the fool that don't put some respect on the name Mr. T. We had a geography teacher who was also the girls' basketball coach. I knew he was weird just by looking at him, and he was quite creepy just by the way he would walk around the class and stand right by a student for about 20 seconds before saying anything. I was a student aide, and I would go to classes and give passes to students that needed to go to the principal's office or to the attendance office. One day I had to go to the gym because his class right then was girls basketball and had to give a pass to the teacher/coach, who I'ma call Chad. Well, Chad had a clipboard and he stuck it in front of his pants, and he would be in the position as if he's in the thrusting movement. I thought that's pretty creepy, but whatever, and even though I'm a boy, he would talk to me in a creepy, perverted way. Anyway, a few months later, Chad was caught in a Walmart parking lot that was decently busy with a girl riding him. He was arrested and the school tried to downplay what happened so no one knew, but the local news got the story and it was spread across the school. For the first 3 days, they would get people in trouble if they talked about it, but then they gave up because most of the school, 3,800 plus students, were talking about it, making jokes. Chad was fired and charged, of course, and he had 2 kids that went here, but they moved immediately after this came out. We have no idea who the girl was that was with this pervert, but apparently he's also been with more than just her. Utterly disgusting. He was the music teacher, so he was also teaching show choir or whatever they call it. The show choir is the one after school when they get to travel a lot. He embezzled a lot of money from the show choir's accounts. I looked it up and it was over $200,000, charged with 1 count of theft by unlawful taking of more than $5,000 and 4 counts of second-degree forgery. The theft charge is a Class 2A felony, 2 of the forgery charges are Class 3 felonies, while the remaining charges are Class 4 felonies. Show choir sounds cool as hell, get to travel around the country and sing and play music and stuff. No, that sounds sick. She didn't get fired. She got bullied into quitting so the school wouldn't have to pay her severance, or whatever it's called in English. Why? Because she was nice and helpful to the kids. I have selective mutism. It was much worse back then than it is now. Back then, I didn't talk at school. At all. Not a single word. Selective mutism is an anxiety disorder that makes you unable to speak in certain situations. For me, those situations were anywhere in public, especially school, and around people I didn't see often, such as distant relatives and family friends, etc. From 2nd until 5th grade, I had this amazing teacher. She was always nice, always helpful. She even made this club with me and a few other girls who I used to play with. Every Monday after school, we would all go to my house and play. At the time, I thought it was just for fun, but now I see that it was probably a form of therapy for me. Playing with these girls equaled something I'm comfortable with people I'm fairly comfortable with in a setting where I'm comfortable, also known as my home. I loved this teacher. My parents and I even got her a chocolate Easter bunny. We used to go to Germany during Easter, and in my opinion, the Easter bunnies you get there are better than the ones you get here in Norway, so I wanted to give one to my teacher. But I think my parents paid for it, so technically it was from them. We even drove to her home and placed it outside her door, either to surprise her or because she wasn't home. I don't remember. She really appreciated it, and when she saw me at school, she said that she hadn't eaten it yet because she wanted to see if it would have babies so she could have more chocolate. You know that nice teacher from Matilda? I don't remember her name. Honey something. My teacher was pretty much exactly like her, and the principal, kind of like the principal in Matilda too, not exactly like her, but close enough to be honest. I never liked the principal and vice principal at the school, but I never really knew why. I just got a bad or negative vibe from them, and they both had the classic Karen haircut. Well, they didn't like what my teacher did for her students. They didn't like that she was helping me be more confident so that maybe I'd be able to speak. They didn't like that she was nice and helped her students beyond teaching them different subjects. When she quit, we were told by the principal that a class couldn't have the same teacher for more than 4 years in a row, which is why she had to teach a different class at a different school. This was at the end of 5th grade. I was 11, I believed them, talked with my mum about it a year or 2 ago, and she immediately said that it is not a thing at all. That was a lie, and there is no such rule. She then also said that the teacher had quit her job at school because the principal and vice principal had bullied her into quitting because she helped the students too much. On our last day at school, she gave every student in her class a rose and a card with a picture of the student and a personal note, just something nice about the student, something they were good at, and that she enjoyed being our teacher. This was in 2005. I'm pretty sure I still have that note. Also, a side note about the butthole principal and vice principal, my parents had a lot of meetings with them about me because he pretty much refused to help me with my selective mutism. They said it was because they didn't know enough about selective mutism.
So my parents got a lot of information that was mostly in German and English and translated a lot of info for them from German to Norwegian and gave all the translated info and the info in English. I'm not sure if they translated that too or if they just gave it to them in English. Then at the next meeting, they said that they didn't have any or enough information about selective mutism, with the folder with all the information literally on a shelf directly behind them. I switched school in the middle of 6th grade. Alright, this one is because of me. I had a crap supply teacher called Mr. W. Mr. W was a douchebag. I have to mention for this that I am short-sighted and at the time didn't have glasses to help me. I was in year 8. This man, Mr. W, wrote on the board, World Religion Sikhism, but my short-sighted bud thought it said work religion, so I said, Sir, does that say work or world religions? And he lost it with me. He screamed his head off at me and sent me out of the classroom, where I waited for the entire rest of the lesson. This was last lesson and without telling my parents, made me stay behind. While I was there, he screamed at me more, slammed a door in my face, then returned with a massive hardback religion book, which he threw at my head. I caught the train home from school. I missed my train because of him, and my parents were really concerned because, of course, I didn't make it home. Long story short, I got out and called them. They reported him to the school, and after a long meeting with the head teacher that involved a lot more screaming, he got fired and never came back. All because of my stupid eyes. I don't know if this teacher had beef with this person or something, but man, what a weird thing to get bent out of shape over. High school Spanish teacher who used to bully all the students. They somehow found out that she faked all of her teaching qualifications. Don't know how she got the job in the first place. A guy was fired from our high school for claiming he was Hitler's son, not to mention some convictions the school was unaware of. The school only realized when some students saw an article about the guy and his convictions and claims in the leading newspaper in the state. There was this teacher that taught English to non-American kids. She started to learn their language to help, but it made it that no one in that class evolved their English in a whole school year. The other year, she got fired and almost all the kids in their class needed to repeat the same level of English class. There isn't many details available, but a teacher got fired for what I can only assume are grape allegations. Despite claims that he was being unfairly fired were given by a few students, he was fired anyway. I don't know much more about it though. She was the water polo teacher at the most prestigious boys' school in South Africa. A solid 12 out of 10, she was very kind, always willing to practice after hours, more than one boy per day. She teaches about 52 boys in her weekly roster, if I remember correctly. She had the stamina of a racehorse. Eventually, one boy could not keep up with her and blew it wide open with the pics she sends him, and others. Everything came out and she left the school. The rest is history. With a quick search, you will find it. God damn, bedded 5 boys in Cape Town while she was married? Oh man. I feel bad for her ex-husband. Mine's less depressing than most. She was so boring, no one continued her class to GCSE level. This was D&T, combination of woodwork, metalwork, textiles, and plastic work. She had a forge in one corner and a pillar drill in the other, as well as lathes and lots of other fun stuff. But she was so overbearing about health and safety beyond a reasonable level. I am aware they can be dangerous, but she'd give the same 20-minute lecture every week. I'm gonna be honest, I don't blame her for doing that same 20-minute health and safety lecture every week. Here's a little story. I had a friend who, when we were in high school, was in woodwork, and this wasn't a targeted thing or anything, but some douchebag put hot glue on the nose bit of a pair of plastic safety goggles, and then my friend so happened to be the lucky one that picked them up, put it on their face, and they have a scar across the bridge of their nose now since then. Kids are stupid, they do stupid things that can hurt themselves or each other, and when they asked the guy why he did it, he was just like, I don't know, and it's like, because you're freaking stupid! I'm 15. This happened when I was maybe 11, and that year I was a troublemaker, suspended every other week, and it got bad. I lived in another city than the school, so I had a contract. It was a get good grades, stay out of trouble, and you can go to this school, and so I did for a bit, and my bully was in my math class. I took his binder when the teacher left the room, and I started running in circles around his desk, and he took my binder, I took his, threw it, stomped the rings, and broke them individually, and this was my way of payback for years of torment since kindergarten, and he tackled me and punched me multiple times, and when I punched him in self-defense, he flew off my chest, teacher screaming for me to get off him, and I wasn't on him. He was on me, but she assumed for some reason, and we went to to the office and I got in trouble, the English teacher yelled at me and told me to grow up and told me to stop getting into trouble and said stuff like I'd never amount to anything and that I'd end up in prison, and all I did was talk back to him. I hated him. And then the principal and all the middle school teachers had a conference with me and my mom, and all the teachers hated me except one. He taught my dad, and he was really cool with me. He let me listen to music in his class, let me do more than the other teachers did, and my dad was killed maybe even 6 months before this, and all the teachers disregarded this and said I was doing this for attention. But my family sits down, eats dinner together. Every night we talk about our days and we all get the same amount of attention and love from my mom, as much as she can give us. And there's 5 kids in my family. Well, my teachers don't understand and think I'm doing these things for no reason. But it was my way of getting back at the world for my dad being double-crossed and killed by his friend, and I was kicked out of school unjustly, and months down the line, my friend calls me on FaceTime and asks the teacher who sided against me why I was kicked out of school, and they're not answering because they see the phones. After I left the school, they went through 2 lockdowns and 1 close call, and people acted crazy, and the principal was fired and got replaced by a nice old lady who used to be a sub-principal who was really nice to me. Joke's on you, Mr. Finch. That sucks about your dad, but if every teacher disliked you except for one, then it's definitely a you problem. Like you said, you were a massive troublemaker at that year. Like, I was a pretty bad troublemaker as well. I had years where I would be like every other week banned from a class or something like that. But, I also admit that I was a little douchebag, at least sometimes. I'm from Argentina. In my second year of high school, my English teacher got sick and we had a substitute. It didn't last an hour just because he said that private school students were more educated in behavior than public school students. My entire classroom reprimanded her, and the next day the principal informed us that she resigned. Although she did not like certain things we said, she gave us a bit of a reason. Let's call my teacher Mr. Bean because he kind of looked like him, if you squint. More so because it's just funny to me. So Mr. Bean was your average science teacher at a glance. Old dude, balding, pretty short, just to give a basic mental image. He didn't really like teaching me all too much. He'd take any chance he could get to sit back and quite literally kick his feet up while we struggled through countless packets with no direction. After a while, he kind of became a joke among my peers, and he was universally hated. Not too bad, I hear you typing. Oh, no. Mr. Bean was a very, let's say, without assuming anything, that he had some stuff going on in his personal life that he started taking out on students. He would get increasingly unprofessional and just straight rude as the years went on. His harassment went too far one day, pushing a student of blah blah high school to threaten the safety of the school. The student had threatened to dispense justice upon the school. School administration took care of the whole situation with the student very quickly. We weren't told what happened to him, but rumors said he was expelled on the spot and put through the legal system. Now, what about Mr. Bean? He just kind of vanished one day. I was told later that he quit, aka school let him quit as opposed to being fired. Did the same thing with my band teacher years back. It was a real shame for that one. Long story short, they didn't want to pay the premium for an actually experienced band teacher. She was one of the best in the state, so to you, Miss MCG, I say thank you, but that's not the story at hand. Couple tangents there, but it's kind of nice to get stories that aren't dramatic or sad or of a promiscuous nature. Geography teacher got caught watching smut in the middle of class on the school computer. Catholic school, religion professor. Shortly after graduating, he got jailed for molesting his daughter. Another religion professor got fired for harassing boys at the school's bathroom. Multiple complained, one accused him of sexual harassment. Another religion professor would actively harass female students during class. Not sure how he didn't get fired. He would sit on their desk, touch their hair, etc. I think you can see a pattern in why I turned up atheist and hated religion class. My god, this school and their religious studies teacher is it's like Hogwarts and Defense Against the Dark Arts teachers. They're always the villain, and these guys are always molesting someone. But in all seriousness, that is absolutely awful. Terrible. In middle school, during guitar class, teacher decides the class should play password, where 2 students stand at the front of the class and try to guess the password written on the board behind them while being given clues. Guitar teacher writes, grape. but without the G, on the board and gives the clue, every man's dream, every woman's worst nightmare. He was promptly fired later that day. I said earlier kids are stupid and do stupid things. Teachers are stupid too. Teachers do stupid frickin' things that get themselves fired. One of the male teachers at my school was accused of messing around with one of his male students, sending messages, pictures, etc. Anyway, supposedly the student was failing the class and got mad at the teacher and reported him with evidence. They started keeping tabs on the guy and building an investigation. A week or so later, they arrested him after school. Turns out, the kid lied and made everything up. Fake pictures, Photoshop messages, all of it. The teacher still did like 90 days in jail, and he's basically never ever going to teach again. Well, goddamn, that is spite incarnate. That is, if I were that teacher, or if I was a witness to that teacher getting revenge on that student many years later, I knew about the context and everything, I wouldn't stop him.
Teachers, what is the greatest way a student has misinterpreted one of your assignments? Not an assignment, but a case study in an exam. Intro prac exam. The student had to do an intro health assessment interview, just rapport building and exploring the client's health. This one kid comes in and sits down and proceeds to mispronounce the condition in his case study multiple times. Not only that, but the mispronunciation was for a different type of condition that was not related to the subject at all, and actually didn't exist. And it was obvious he had not been attending classes. He also did numerous other things wrong, so ended up failing. When marks were released, I received a long email from him about how I was unfair in failing him, as he was exemplary, etc., etc. I responded politely, pointing out that he had confused the actual condition in the case with another, unrelated, non-existent condition, and that he needed to consider how he might approach a similar situation in the subsequent and more important exam. I didn't hear from him again, but he did start turning up to classes. At the end of the semester, the student had to address 3 case study scenarios and perform a specified task for each. A different marker took each case. This kid comes in, cool, calm, and confident. He comes to me for his final case, and out of 100+ odd cases, happens to pull the same one as his first assessment with me. Seriously, a 1% chance. And he proceeds to make the same pronunciation error as the first time. I stopped him and asked, "Are you sure it is condition X?" "Yes." "You are 100% sure it is that?" "Yes." "Are you sure it might not be something else?" "Absolutely sure." Okay. The student acting the case knew what I was getting at and struggled to keep a straight face. The actual condition was rheumatoid arthritis. The condition, the student identified it as hemorrhoid arthritis. How on earth do you get those things confused? I am a teacher, but this is my aunt's story. She taught a special class. The instructions said to draw a bar graph. The student had no idea what a graph was, but he drew a beautiful bar. It was a Western saloon, with double swinging doors and a long bar. The bottles were not labeled, but very clearly drawn. This was on a state-mandated test as well. She had to take a break to laugh as she wasn't allowed to say anything. That is pretty cute, but clearly the system has failed this child. I don't know how old they are. High school English teacher. I once assigned extra credit opportunities for my college-bound sophomores that included writing a 3-page short story without using the letter E. There were several other prompts and assignments, and I received a fair number of assignments. However, only one student attempted to write a story without using the letter E. She simply wrote a regular story and neglected to put the E into words where it belonged. So, HR, story, look D, a lot like this, with the TH, spat, S, and all. And yes, I had explained that the story should use words that don't contain E. During the course end test of my ESL classes, the students had to listen to a recording of a lady speaking about her books on science and metaphysics, and then answer a few questions to check their listening skills. For the first question, they had to answer, who is conducting the speech? The girls' answer, the physical box. It ended up becoming a meme among the teachers of the school. We even made a paper craft box with the all-seeing eye on it and said it was the deity of bad test answers. There was this girl who was like 18 in my ESL, English as a second language course, and she was definitely the worst student ever. By the end of each course module, there was a test. Nothing too hard, but she managed to fail it 7 consecutive times. On the 6th time, she decided to try it. Previous tests had been all blank and answered the problem. What's the question for someone's age? Her answer, what birthday happy? On the 7th try, she gets the same test. Same questions. And her answer to the problem from before? What happy? My daughter's class was recently given an assignment. Decorate a paper turkey is something else so that the turkey doesn't get eaten on Thanksgiving. My daughter dressed it up as Santa. It looked pretty good. When I was dropping her off one day, I looked at the other posted in the hall. Someone decorated theirs as a pizza. I'm not sure if that's a good answer or not. I mean, I'm pretty sure, you don't have pizza on Thanksgiving, but I'm sure someone has, or would. Middle school teacher here. Gave the students a packet that was stapled together consisting of 5 pages, assigned only pages 3 and 4 for homework. The pages were not numbered. One student came to me the next day and told me that he couldn't do it because the pages were not numbered. I told him to just count and he would be able to find pages 3 and 4. Even his parents couldn't figure it out. It was a baffling moment for me in my teacher career. Now, I can't deny I have moments of stupidity. I have a brain fart here and there on a really simple thing that shouldn't give me any trouble, but this is on a whole different level. In high school, a girl in my politics class was assigned to do a presentation on euthanasia. Instead, she did the assignment on youth in Asia. At some point, you must have explained that, what euthanasia is. How? I'm a teacher, but this happened to a colleague of mine who teaches religion, Catholic school. He was giving a test where one of the questions was, how are we made in God's image? The student responded, we are made in God's image when a man and a woman love each other very much. The man gives the woman sperms, which need to find the egg. Many sperms die, but some make it to the egg where they rest there for 9 months and then the baby is born. Needless to say, this one made its rounds in the faculty room. I'm just picturing the teacher turning around and being like, wrong goddamn class, dipstick. Minus the goddamn, I'm pretty sure Catholics don't like to take the Lord's name in vain. I am a teacher of English as a foreign language from Hungary. My first job at this school, where all the also ran kids from the town were collected. So, first lesson at this class, and I started to talk about the English language, when all of a sudden, this guy from the back shouts in English, I am a big penis. I almost died of laughter inside, but managed to keep a straight face. Apparently, no other people in the room understood anything other than penis. And clearly, the guy wasn't sure either what he wanted to say. Now, to make it clear, you can use the verb of existence in Hungarian to express possession as well. It was quite clear that he meant to say, I have a big penis. I took the opportunity to explain the difference between the verbs be and have in English and how they correlated to their Hungarian equivalents. There was a huge laughter when they managed to put the pieces together, and the class virtually unanimously agreed that he was right the first time. It was funny as hell, I have to say, but I couldn't show that, of course. Plot twist, just this morning I saw a mugshot of the guy at the market. He is wanted by the police. Bloody hell, that is a plot twist. I once worked with a summer intern who was studying economics at a fairly exclusive university. The professor had asked them to write about some business set in Peoria. Apparently, most of them had never heard the saying, will it play in Peoria? For those outside the US, it basically means, will simple folk in the heartland understand? Usually asked of sophisticated works. They assumed Peoria was the name of a hypothetical country which colored their analysis since they could not know anything about the economy there, making it a pretty useless exercise. Apparently the professor was pretty miffed that the well-educated, well-traveled 20-somethings had never heard of Peoria, and the intern was shocked to hear that we all knew that it was a city in Illinois. I'm glad they specified that people outside of the US probably wouldn't know of it, because I certainly don't. Not a teacher, but a really funny mistake. A friend of mine was told to present a paper about Charles Darwin. When he looked up his homework at home, his handwritten D looked like a P, and so it occurred that he held a presentation about Mermon Parwin, who is an Afghan singer. I once asked my class to visit a local nature sanctuary with the instructions of finding and identifying as many native and invasive species as they could for extra credit. They were to take close-up pictures of the plants and then take a selfie with the plant in the background, so I knew they weren't just ripping pics from the internet. They were to take those pictures and put them in a simple PowerPoint and turn that in. One student submitted a PowerPoint with him standing in the hallway of his home holding up an iPad with pictures of different people on it. He took more than 50 pictures, everyone with him holding his iPad with a different person's face displayed on it. Anyone with non-white skin was identified as invasive. Anyone with white skin was native. These were just random pictures of random people. Cringe factor 1000. Make it over 9,000. How would someone lack such self-awareness and just like that? There's no way they did that and thought, yeah, this'll go down well. I'm a teacher now, but I still remember this from grade 4 when I would have been around 9 years old. The teacher split us all up into groups of 3 and each group received a different assignment task. The teacher didn't explain each project verbally, but handed cards with the task outlined onto each group. I am vague on the wording of the assignments because it was a really long time ago, but my group's task was about volume and we had to use cups to measure water and see how much we could hold using them. For some reason, the other 2 classmates in my group interpreted the assignment task from the teacher as being to drink as much water as humanly possible using cups. I remember knowing they had misinterpreted the task but stayed quiet because I thought it was funny and it sounded more interesting to see how much water they could drink than the actual task. Long story short, they both gave everything they had to the task and they both ended up projectile vomiting like crazy. I wish more people that are actually teachers were explaining this, but whatever, I guess. But this is completely unrelated. One time when I was in primary school, I had science homework to do, and my brother drank the liquid that the homework was about. So when I went to school the next morning, I literally had a note and like a diagram showing my brother drank my homework. I had to write a cause and effects paper for a college class. I couldn't think of a good topic, so I wrote my paper on the cause and effect of not having a topic for your cause and effect paper. The alternate title, because all of my essays have alt titles, was Using Rhetoric to Obscure Lack of Content. The next semester I had a similar class with a teacher I didn't like, so I did all of my papers on topics I knew would miff her. I put extra effort in to make sure that the formatting, grammar, etc. was perfect. Passing a class only because the teacher had no legitimate reason to fail me is awesome. Not gonna lie, that is pretty awesome. But this reminds me of how when I was young I had to do 100 lines in French class because me and the teacher didn't get along and I was kind of a, douchey little brat and whatnot, but they also weren't handling the situation terribly well, to be honest. Anyway, I got told to do 100 lines of any French phrase I decided to do. I was like, anything. So when they came back, there were 100 lines of Je déteste name of teacher over and over and over. In hindsight, it was utterly childish and just like a waste of time, but like they apparently found it funny, and I would eventually in my final year of high school go around to any teacher that I felt as though I had wronged and apologize for any past behavior and express appreciation for their continued patience with me, I suppose. My mother is a teacher, currently to a bunch of 10-year-olds. My favorite is the kid who had an assignment to write several antonyms. He did well except the last example, where he was supposed to write antonym for brave. He simply wrote, I can't say that, a lady's nether regions. I came to the States in 3rd grade, and one of the first assignments was to type up an essay we wrote in class, double-spaced. After a while, I was starting to get really annoyed with the double spacing format. At last, I finished and proudly returned it into my teacher, only to have her burst into laughter. Yeah, turns out double spacing isn't putting 2 spaces between every word. Preschool teacher here asked my students to tell me the first sound in dog. Almost everyone responded, woof. There was an interesting student I had called Andy from Hong Kong. He never took anything seriously and could only put very and adjectives together. Very handsome, for example. I asked Andy's class to write me a cover letter for a job. Andy's response went something like this. I handsome. I 7 centimeters long. Have good body, strong legs, nice face. I want job McDonald's. I once asked his friend, also from Hong Kong, if Andy was just as whack in Cantonese. He replied, oh hell yeah, he's extremely stupid. In my science class, we started a project last week where they had to make a poster of a cell analogy that they came up with. For example, someone made a city because the town hall is like the nucleus, a power plant is like the mitochondria, etc. One girl just could not come up with anything. I gave her a bunch of examples and then let her think about it. When I came back to check on her, she said, I'm making a sandwich. I was like, okay, but that might be kind of tough. Did you think about the parts of the sandwich that match up with cell organelles? What is the mitochondria of a sandwich? She was like, okay, I'll pick something else. I get back to her a few minutes later and I ask her, and now she's making a taco. I explained the same thing. Over the course of 2 days, while most other students started drawing, she suggested a British phone booth, a cell phone, Sonic the Hedgehog, a pizza, and a Taco Bell. For each suggestion, I said that she could do it as long as she matched up each part to an organelle, and she'd say, "Oh yeah," because she forgot that I wasn't just letting her draw random stuff. Near the end of the period on Friday, I went to her and said, "Look, let me help you. Draw an island," and I explained half of the organelles for her and even started sketching stuff out. She nodded and agreed to do that. Today, I gave her a poster board and then went to check on her. She said she didn't want to do the island and started drawing a bowling alley with random parts labeled as organelles without even thinking about the functions. I don't even care anymore. In high school English, we were reading Shakespeare's Merchant of Venice. One of the central themes of the book was about class, wealth, struggle. The teacher asked us to write a weekly short essay with a viewpoint from a different class. A friend of mine, who always pays half attention, ended up turning in a paper from world history class on a semi-related subject. The funny thing is, he got the paper back with a check mark, meaning the assignment was complete. This info spread across the class, and people started turning in a few random papers to test the theory that the teacher wasn't actually reading the assignments. Before you know it, half the class started turning in random crap, everyone getting check marks back, but it got so ridiculous that people weren't even turning in coherent sentences. This went on for about nearly 2 months until one day, when the teacher was about to give the graded papers back, she noticed one of the papers wasn't quite right. She proceeded to read through it, and that's when half the class knew we were screwed. She called out the perpetrator's name and started reading out loud his writing. It literally was, "The grass is sort of green, the sky is really blue, dirt on the floor filled the ground, ice cream tastes good." I have to admit it was really hard for some of us to control our laughter. She then looked at the next paper and then the next and the next. All of them were ridiculously off topic. She flipped, started yelling and pounding the desk with her fist. She went through and gave zeros to half the class. Thank God I turned in actual legit paper that day, as I had started getting paranoid about it when I realized too many students were doing it. You know, on one hand, this is her fault. She wasn't doing her job. This is what happens when you don't do your job right. On the other, guys, you were on easy street. She was just giving you easy passes on whatever you'd hand in, and you decided to squander it and take the mick. You're stupid. Gave grades 2 and 3 students an activity where they had to draw foods from every food group. When I went around checking, I noticed one student had some odd things in his section for grains. I asked him what he drew, and he told me lettuce and spinach. When I asked why he thought those were grains, his face went white and he said, "You mean that doesn't say greens?" It was adorable. Former Seattle High School science teacher here. I had one particular class which was very literal, and I was cracking down on homework being late. I said, "This assignment is due on Wednesday, so to get full credit, email it to me before Thursday so that I can start grading it in time before we meet again." One student, actually named Kevin, asked what time it should be emailed, so I said by midnight. He said midnight would be Thursday. Fair point, so I clarified 11:59 p.m. would work. Another kid said he'd be in Arizona, another time zone, and asked what he should do. I smiled and announced 11:59 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. This should not have been a time crunch for anyone. This one girl emailed me Wednesday night at 11:21 p.m. saying, "Here it is, sorry it's early. I stayed up an extra 2 hours waiting for 11:59 p.m., but I'm just so tired and my dad wants me to go to bed. Thanks for understanding." As a teacher of a community college library course, I assigned a student the task of compiling a bibliography of books for high school students on the Middle Ages. Half of the bibliography contained books on midlife crises, empty nester, and menopause. Jesus goddamn crickety Christ, how the hell do people make these mix-ups? I had a foreign exchange student from France in my ELA class. The assignment was to write a personal narrative about an important moment in their life. Instead of reading the essays, I had my students read them aloud if they were comfortable. This was my first mistake. The student who will be referred to as Jay goes up to the podium to present. Now, I need to point out that Jay did not speak often in class, and we've been working hard to get him to speak to his peers. I was so proud that he was willing to share his story. He stands up there with his essay and lets this wonderful story unfold. He proceeds to tell the class about his first time having a night emission. He said he went to school and told his friends. He was young. What happened? They suggested that he go home and touch himself. I thought for sure I was not hearing this story correctly at this point. My second mistake was not stopping the presentation. He was so soft-spoken and matter-of-fact that I had not caught on to where the story was headed. He then proceeded to tell the story of the first time he touched himself in the bathroom. My class was in tears. I had no idea what to do and sat there dumbfounded. I asked him why he would share something so personal. Jay responded that a narrative is a story, and personal means something you wouldn't want to share. Made sense to him. I ended the class with, what happens in fifth period stays in fifth period. Students asked all the time what happened in fifth period, but as far as I know, no one shared. So they shouldn't. Poor Jay. I mean, good on him for sharing it. Brave little French man, but god damn, I'm glad no one shared that story. If there were less anonymity in this, I would not share this. High schoolers, what cliques exist now? Is it still nerds, jocks, and stoners, or are there new groups that the older generations don't know about? Yeah, those still exist, but now there are sub-cliques of those and new cliques like Tumblr kids, gamers, edgy kids, furries, SJWs, those weird people that call their friends dad. Basically, anything on the internet is a clique in real life. People who call their friends dad? What does that mean? I've never heard of this. What, like they're all like, oh, daddy, oh, dad. I'm trying to like figure this out, but I can't. Is this a fetish thing? Nah, I'm in Maine. We kind of have like a caste system here where the bottom level are like the socially awkward kids. Usually freshmen, junior Tumblr, geeky type, RARXD. The next level is like the theater-ish semi-popular people. Then there's the semi-popular people, and finally the group of girls and the jock-ish guys. There still aren't any if you're British because of school uniforms stopping anyone from expressing themselves. Phones still banned in most places as well. One group of people, just people. Thank God. I graduated a year ago, but it's taken a more internet social media approach. Some people have Twitters, Finstas, etc. It's weird. Kids are weird. I could have told you that. Everything here exists at my school, except we have an extra group called AmITheA kids. Our school has this outdoor pit or amphitheater in the center of campus where all the weird kids go to sit during lunch. These are your Tumblrinos, loners, and most notably furries. Our school in the past a few years ago has actually banned furry accessories like ears and tails. You know, I kind of understand that rule. For one, I guess because schools are usually more interested in stopping occurrences of bullying happening than punishing people who actively bully others. But at the same time, some teacher probably found out it was a fetish thing and went, well, that's not allowed at school. So, in my opinion, perfectly understandable.
Keep those furries in their place.
The ultra-progressive, genderless, communist clique, they only seem to own crop tops, even the boys, and blame their bad grades and lack of success on their oppression by white males. But this is coming from a humanities school in Manhattan, so it might not represent the norm. Not really any exaggerated cliques like in the movies where it's super obvious and separated. It's all merged, to be honest. I hang out with some jocks who are also mildly geeky, and I'm a metalhead skater. The only real clique I've seen are skaters, many of whom are stoners, but I could never fit in with them. All the black kids at my school group up for some reason. Basically, you make friends with anyone and hang out with them, regardless of stereotypes. It's still crap though, because bullies exist and are more subtle. Yeah, I probably said this way too many times, but I imagine with the mass access to the internet and understanding that younger people have of it nowadays, like bullying is just on a whole different level. I was a high schooler a year ago. Thank God I've left that place. But in my school, there were the preps, the nerds, and the loners. Lots of loners. In fact, I was one of them. People who sit by themselves during lunch, people who watch from the sidelines during prom. At first, it was depressing, but I got a different view of school and life than most did. Also, the few friends I did make are stuck with me forever. Only regret is I wished I studied more in high school. I was always the kind of person who could do next to nothing and pass with C's and B's. Yeah, I wish I studied harder in high school as well. Just graduated from art school, mostly ages from 18 to 23 now, and there's more defined cliques in college I've found than there was in secondary school, ages 12 to 19. In my art school, the most common stereotype was the aesthetic kids. I suppose they wear a lot of thrasher, but most have never skated, smokes all the rollies, has anxiety, has alti hairstyle, wears makeup unusually, wears the vintage store/urban outfitters trends, retro sportswear, filler, Adidas, wax jackets, loud collar blocking. Then you had your typical hard boys, chav wannabes, rich kids who dressed in tracksuits, Fred Perry who sold illegal substances and was stoned all the time, got into fights and robbed crap, hippies and new agers. Although being amongst most of the other cliques that were toxic, this person was eventually wrapped in a boho variation of the aesthetic. You have goths, gamers, cosplay community. We have one total scene queen, just one, and surprise, surprise, she ended up being a self-absorbed female dog. So many out-of-touch rich kids, so many who paid for their degrees, some hipsters, a handful of genuine artists, and so much crap. Most of the cliques in art college bonded over two common interests: illegal substances and partying. There were some who never did any illegal substances before going to art school, but eventually they did. There was a few good eggs who genuinely never drank or partied or did illegal substances and seemed to be level-headed. But honestly, our college itself thought it was better and contemporary in the art world and didn't make room for them or their style of art fit. That was the first place I felt it was clique-y. When I first went in there, I was confident, self-assured, and happy in my skin. Everyone else was anxiety-riddled and worried about not fitting in. After 3 years there in a mountain of debt, I feel I've lost my confidence and my sense of self and feel anxiety creeping back up on me. I've been battling with anxiety for years before. Everyone else seems to be more confident and assured in their ways, and there were so many crappy and fake people. This reminds me how I used to visit my friends at a university they used to attend for arts, and I was surprised when they came out of it and basically had zero contact with anyone that they spoke to at that university after the fact. And maybe I'm just dumb and weird, because wherever I go, I usually make at least one meaningful connection and someone that I speak to on a fairly regular basis, but I don't know, I guess it was weird to me. SJWs, cancerous scum of the earth, aka popular kids who wear Supreme and talk down on others. People with far right and left political beliefs only taken seriously in the 1930s. Weebs with far right and left political beliefs only taken seriously in the 1930s. Music kids, STEM kids, people who ironically use the word normie. Christians, people who only talk to other people online. Believe it or not, I dig this perspective on things. Supreme kid, anime and video game kids, like nerds, but extremely bad at school. Most people enjoy either or both of those. Just don't only talk about it. This isn't something I've really thought about before, but I'll give it a go. There are the really popular seniors and juniors who are popular and involved in just about every extracurricular activity. Then there are the band, orchestra, and choir kids, which is pretty self-explanatory. Then you have the really well-rounded people who are generally nice, get good grades, involved in a few extracurricular activities and such. And then you have the memers. We also have a very strong LGBT community in our school. Then you have the really trashy group of people who smoke a lot of weed, don't shower, try and fail to skate, and rarely go to their classes. Then you have the Tumblr subset of individuals, which is pretty self-explanatory as well. Many of these groups have bled into each other and have their own subcategories. Oddly enough, I haven't noticed any of the aesthetic kids that many other people are talking about. The athletic kids are the popular ones. The nerdy ones are mostly just the ones who look up weird crap on their computers in class. They're the memers. The art hoes who dress like they're from the 90s and are obsessed with photography. The emos who have a new hair color every week and wear band t-shirts galore. The edgy kids who make everything a joke, like the nerds, are also memers, come to think of it. Like a hardcore version of the nerds. The other category of people who don't really do much and don't fit into any category. Hi, I'm a nerd. Also, I think what's interesting about this generation is the blurred lines between groups and stereotypes. Groups seem to intertwine and be more flexible than the cardboard version of what you'd imagine it to be. I would definitely say that's to do with things like the internet and whatnot. People just have a lot more room to explore different things and spread themselves out over multiple subjects. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when being a nerd and someone who openly enjoyed video games to an extreme degree that wasn't like Call of Duty and Assassin's Creed and stuff, you were a nerd. But then you had things like The Big Bang Theory came out, and that sort of made being nerdy just a regular thing. I swear to God, before The Big Bang Theory made it like kind of cool or trendy to like nerdy things, you could not enjoy these things on like a public, open basis without being called a nerd, a weirdo, or obsessive or something. Not even those anymore. In San Jose, it's all of the hype beasts that wear Ultra Boosts or Jordans or Yeezys and everything like that. Nowadays, it falls under pretty much the Tumblr indie rock groups and ghetto sporty people, SoundCloud rappers, STEM kids, which has a decent overlap with the I like to offend people community and are usually the most cringeworthy and irritable of the bunch. It's a lot more individual now than it was, though.
Girls wearing cat ears. Frickin' everywhere!
I graduated in 2013, but the groups were smart kids who were the most respected by anyone, Asians who were into Wong Fu and Kev Jumba or Niga Higa, photographers and picture-perfect people who knew every single thing about cars, preppy cheerleaders with a lot of makeup, students who sleep 24/7. That one white guy, my school had 90% Asians and 9% Latino. Students who are a little too into anime. Students who have a concerning addiction to League of Legends. Students who can skip most of their classes for track and swim meets or concerts. That student with a 4.5 GPA going to MIT. Okay, so I literally had no idea who Niga Higa was until this very moment. I didn't know it was a YouTuber. I just thought they were listing martial arts or something with really entertaining names to a more ignorant person like myself. In LA, it's the rise of the Hesh community. Basically, everyone who wears camo pants and Tyler the Creator merch or Supreme. These people are the absolute worst. Don't get me wrong, I love Tyler the Creator, but damn, I hate this community of wannabe photographers and edge types. The only true clique in the sense that they're closed off and unwelcoming are the self-proclaimed outcasts. The kids that claim no one but the other weirdos like me. They're not banded together because everyone else rejects them, but because any small difference in interests makes them turn up their nose. I think it's because they refuse to experience anything else that their social skills become stunted, and their opinion of anyone who isn't an outcast is so low. For the most part, groups intersect and people are decent to each other. In my hometown, we had the Flannel Mafia. They were around 40 kids strong within 2 to 3 grays. I don't remember how many there really were. They always wore flannel, shared stories about how they wrapped their four-wheelers or snowmobile around a tree or another object, acted like hicks on purpose, the height of their trucks equaled status, and all of them had Confederate flags in their rooms, despite us living in the North woods. It was a pretty unorganized clique, but if one of them wanted to get the others together, the others wouldn't mind. It was pretty weird, but they didn't do any real harm, so no one minded much. Pretty people with no real friends, just orbiters. Nerdy kids with dark humor. Girl groups. Meaning groups with only girls. Cool kids. People who listen to non-mainstream music and watch Netflix who think they're cool. Aesthetic kids. Instagrammers, mood, aesthetics, black and white photos, Lana Del Rey, and whatever else goes with tea. Party people. People who can only talk about parties.
The gay-straight alliance, under which the high school experienced a millennia of peace.
As a senior in high school currently, here are my thoughts. There are 2 basic distinctions. You are either A, partier, someone who is down to drink and do illegal substances, or B, someone who is against partying. The A's are then subdivided by how hard you party, and what illegal substances you do for the most part. The alcoholics versus the stoners versus the kids who huff stuff. And the B's divide themselves by seemingly random feuds and grudges, thus breaking them into groups based on what they do, like the typical groups. Same old in Midwest Wisconsin. Valley girls, jocks, stoners, nerds. Currently a junior, there are quite a few loners where I'm from, ones that usually don't fit with the society of my town. Nothing new there. There is a new really patriotic group that I have recognized these past few years, usually racist and negative towards people that don't stand for the pledge and or don't recognize military as outstanding people. Town I'm from is Mondovi, very conservative and secluded. As someone who's 17, there are more groups of kids that try to be rebellious rebellious by being offensive, screaming gay, doing illegal substances, and looking to their friends to confirm that what they did was superior to everyone else. They also listen to rap music or whatever artist seems to be at the top of Spotify. Constantly, these are the kids that always have their little earbuds in their ears during class and get in trouble for it. As for the nerds, there are no nerds. In fact, nobody uses that term anymore. There are more kids that look like troublemakers that are geniuses than the typical nerd you see in movies. Another thing, there is that group of kids that scream every single phrase they have ever heard of, such as F-boy, lit, yas, insert something. Who? I don't give AF about that teacher. There are so many I just remembered the cringe group that walk around with a loudspeaker blasting rap music.
I got some bad news for you, kid. You might want to sit down for this. If you think there are no nerds around, then you're probably the nerd.
Gamers account for a crap ton of people at my school, and country kiddos wearing country crap with their trucks, and emo squadron, which no one really likes, cheerleaders and football squad, stoners, sometimes involved with football and cheerleader squad, student council squad. All these are probably the biggest. It used to be your average high school with all the stereotypes. Now all the chill people left, and it's just judgmental preps, halfway crooks, snitches, jocks, F-boys, and a couple emos and furries, nerds spread around. Real shame, but you can't blame anything other than the school administration and the cops running around trying to arrest every kid for everything from jaywalking to cigarettes. I don't think I agree with that assessment very much. I think the issues start at home for the most part. The main cliques nowadays are vapors, some stoners, SoundCloud rappers, nerds, emos, and of course, the group that will never fade, the cool group. But now, it's more dispersed. There's more beef and a lot more gangsters. People are friends, but everyone has something to say about someone as soon as their back is turned. A lot of ravers and drinkers, too. The experience of everyone being a two-faced mother at high school. I'm a senior in high school, and this is what I've witnessed. There are the Chads, who are the athletes and work out at the gym as much as they can, and then ask nerds what the heck is going on in class. Then there are the band nerds who are literally obsessed with band and ignore their class lessons to tap their fingers on the desk while reading sheet music that they will never use later in life. Then there are the honor freaks, rich kids who are in honor or AP classes who act like they're superior above everyone else and only talk to kids who are in those higher classes. The wannabe hackers, nerdy kids who go on the school computer and act like they're trying to hack something in the mainframe, but in reality they're doing jack and just messing with the settings. The banger kids who throw bangers every weekend, obsess over them, and then once the party is over, they talk about that same party for months till another banger is thrown. Then weeaboos and cringe kids who obsess over anime, filthy frank, and iDubbbz and act like they're all edgy, when in reality, they're idiots who jump off wooden benches and shout, "I'm gay!" God damn, this one's judgmental. There's a lot of furries at my school. It's kind of awkward and cringy for the rest of us. There's a massive club and everything. I'm pretty sure this is not most high schools, though. Going to school in South Carolina, we have a clique my friends dubbed prepnecks. Kids who go mudding, hunting, and fishing. They drive massive pickup trucks, put Trump stickers and Confederate flags on everything, but they also go to church every Sunday, have really wealthy parents, and live in giant houses in the burbs. Okay, hear me out. Take away the Confederate flag and these guys sound like they'd be pretty cool. Otherwise, I don't give a crap who you vote for. I graduated in 2016, so I'm not a high schooler anymore, but the two newer cliques I noticed in school were kids who only talked about politics all day, every day with each other, and the worst clique of all, weeaboos. They were everywhere at my school. Also, they didn't shower at all. Any of them. I don't know why, but all of them, every single last one, smelled like an actual dumpster. I want to say I would most definitely pick the smelly otaku over the guy or gal who just cannot turn off, you know? But I don't know. If you've got really poor hygiene and you actually smell, it would be kind of a tough choice because I hate people who do nothing but talk about politics all day, every day. And while I can definitely tolerate a smelly person for a certain amount of time, all day at school, yeah, I'd probably still pick pick the smelly otakus, but try and, be informative about the benefits of regularly washing? At my high schools in the United States of America, the social hierarchy is as follows. The population is split up into cells. Each cell is run by one extremely homosexual guy, aka Homoviathan or Alpha Gay. The Homoviathan has a bunch of girls who are his best friends, and according to their social contract, he gives each girl a bunch of crap on everyone else in exchange for the ability to asexually assault them whenever he pleases. Underneath the girlfriends are the straight guys. The straight guys are kissing the Homoviathan's butt in an attempt to get with one of his constituents, and as such become part of his friend group. Finally, you have the straight guys who are not in the dating pool, who exclusively hang out with others of their class. I implore you, members of the LGBT community watching this video, utilize Homoviathan. Put it in the jargon. I don't care. God damn, look at that proud Homoviathan over there. I graduated high school last year, but from what I could see, smart STEM kids who kinda kept to themselves but were pretty cool. The anime kids, nothing inherently wrong with anime, but when you watch so much anime that you have to repeat senior year 3 times, nerds at my school were something like an evolution. I don't really have a better words for it. If you know, you know. You could be a nerd and still be cool, smart, or extremely antisocial. Nerds seem to be sort of the bridges between the smarter kids and the ones who weren't as academically inclined. The art students, the athletes, the hunters, and gun fanatics. Last year birthed a new division, Politipals. You had people from all branches squatting up against the other political party. There were 2 main branches of popular, the ones that were actually nice to people, and the ones who kept to their own cliques and made fun of people who were either a hyper geek or weren't part of any group. Butterflies, the kids who you'd call your average student. Gets good grades, isn't socially extra, isn't a student athlete, probably has a few extracurricular hobbies, pretty much the student who has the potential to befriend anyone except the rude branch of popular. But alas, none of these groups are necessarily mutually exclusive. Medical professionals. What was a time where a patient ignored you and almost died because of it? My dad worked for a company that was based in northern USA. The owner was Canadian and had a cabin up in Canada. He was visiting the cabin a few summers back. He had some medical issues happen and went to the hospital. They said something was wrong with his heart and he needed surgery. He called my dad because he knew my sister was a doctor and wanted a second opinion. They scheduled the surgery in Canada for a few months out. My dad called my sister, and my sister said in the USA they would never let anyone leave the hospital with his condition, and he would be in surgery that night. She said, he needs surgery now. Well, he left the hospital, and a few days later, he was dead. It was a sad I told you so. Okay, the patient in this story is a horse, and in order to fully understand this story, there are a few things about the horse that you have to know. Horses have something in their bodies called a guttural pouch. This warms oxygen that is on its way to the brain. There is a blood vessel that is under the guttural pouch, and sometimes horses can get a fungus in the guttural pouch that slowly erodes the blood vessel, causing nosebleeds. The vessel will rupture, heal, and the cycle goes on until one day it ruptures and the horse bleeds out. This condition is called guttural pouch mycosis. It is diagnosed via endoscopy and is deadly if left untreated. Now, I'm in no way a medical professional, but heard this story from an equine vet. She was called out to a farm because a horse was experiencing repeated nosebleeds. She was pretty positive that the horse had guttural pouch mycosis, and she and the owner decided that the vet would scope the horse. She went to get the scope, and when she got back, the owner had changed their mind. She didn't want the horse scoped. The vet left. She was never told definitively that the horse died, but the next time she went to the farm, that horse was nowhere to be seen. Aw man, horses are like my second favorite animal that I regularly see. Equine creatures are just cool, but then again, I just got back from the safari park and I'm kind of vibing with sea lions right now. Sea lions are dope. I'm a vet tech, so my problems are my clients, not my patients. Patients just do what they're gonna do. But boy, boy, do we have a problem with client compliance. You'd be amazed how many times we get something to this effect. Dog comes in very sick. Through testing, we find out the dog has Addison's, heart failure, thyroid disease, something else that is a lifelong disease that can only be treated with lifelong medication, not cured. We explain all of this, and possibly after an expensive hospital stay, we send owner home with a month's worth of medication. Several months go by, and O calls upset that their dog is sick again. Yeah, you haven't picked up any heart medication in 5 months. Have you gotten it at another clinic? No. Yeah, no, come in, and thanks for messing up everything. Or 2 years ago, you came in for your regular exam. We talked to you about preventing heartworm disease. You said our prevention is poison and you'd use a safer, more holistic method, and now your dog is here coughing and weak. Hello, heartworms. No, your essence of lavender, your rosemary, your coconut oil, your apple cider vinegar, and every other bit of bullcrap you can throw at me doesn't kill heartworms. Your dog isn't a raw chicken. Stop marinating him, for God's sake. Also, gotta love the very classic, I gave him his antibiotics, pain meds and steroids for 2 days and he got better, so I stopped. Now he's worse again, and I cannot stress enough the importance of restricting activity after your pet has surgery. Yes, she feels good, enough to run around the yard maybe. That's because she's on pain medication. That does not change the fact that we just removed multiple organs out of her belly hours ago. And now you're bringing her in with her intestines swinging in the breeze and blood everywhere. Thanks for nothing, dumb butt. Just do what we tell you. I swear to God, so many lives and a bunch of heartache and money could be saved if people just did what we tell them to do. You're paying us money for our opinion. You're taking the time out of your day to come sit down and talk with us, all just to go, well, yeah, but I read this on Google, or, well, my dog is too smart to do something like that. I know my dog better than you. It's baffling. Yes, you do know your dog better than me, but I know dogs in general better than you, and I can say you'd be hard-pressed to find a dog that won't do some stupid crap in their life because they're a dog. Your dog is not so smart that he won't screw his sister, eat a bunch of grapes, or rip apart his bandages. It is your job to watch over them and ensure they don't do those things. So just do what we frickin' tell you to do, Christ's sake. It sounds like this person needed to vent, but also this all sounds like, I'm guessing they're not being specific. It sounds like they're talking about a single individual. Medical student here. Last summer I was doing ER practice and a guy came in with a massively swollen leg, which was deep vein thrombosis, a clot in your leg vein that can dislodge and travel straight to your lungs and kill you. That same guy came in some months prior with the same condition and was explicitly told that if his leg hurts again and starts to swell, to sit down and not walk. Apparently this time the guy came, he walked to the ER, like 20 minutes of walking. He didn't die though. I guarantee if it's an older gentleman, they probably just completely disregarded that information that you told them and went, I'll walk it off. And when that didn't work, then they said, okay, maybe I should go to the hospital. Diabetic patient who broke his ankle left the cast on for 6 months because he didn't want to bother coming back to the hospital. Our front bubble stunk of rotting flesh. It's a fairly large room and the cast was still on. We move him to another area. I'm hovering over ortho as he is taking the lower part of the cast off. On the outside, on the medical aspect of his ankle, you could see there was some fluid from the inside that stained the cast, this nasty color. When the cast popped off, it looked like zombie flesh, oozy, gangrenous, stunk like death. The funniest part about it is when the ortho resident is talking to him about what the plan is going to be, a fly kept buzzing around and landing on his exposed, nasty leg. I am not a medical professional, but one time my grandpa had a surgery and was told not to smoke for a while, and when he got home, he smoked and burst an artery and bled all over the back seat of my dad's car. That sounds terrifying. Imagine taking a puff of a cigarette and then just gush, blood everywhere. Had a very drunk, less than cooperative older gentleman come into the trauma ICU after getting into a fight with his lady friend, who then stabbed him in the neck with a screwdriver. She luckily missed his airway, but nicked a large vessel. He had a hematoma forming on the side of his throat that was growing quickly and endangering his breathing. Wheezing and stridor could be heard with every breath, and he was doing a good bit of bleeding. He needed surgery to repair the vessel and decompress the hematoma. Dude was so wasted and uncooperative that he blatantly refused and kept trying to leave. The doctors were scrambling to get paperwork in order to do the procedure with an emergency consent, as the patient was obviously impaired. Patient frantically motions for me to come to his bedside. He's coughing and sputtering. I look him straight in the eyes after assessing to make sure he was still maintaining good oxygen saturation and say, "You can't breathe." He nods frantically. "Well, that's a shame because you sent away the surgeon that was going to fix that. You want me to go get him?" More frantic nods. "You going to let him do the surgery and fix your throat this time?" Continued frantic nods. I call over my shoulder to the now group of OR personnel discussing the logistics of keeping the operation legal. He consents. They jump and literally run with his butt to surgery. Fixed him up. He spent a couple days on a breathing machine just to prevent his throat from swelling closed post-op. If we would have let him walk out, he would have suffocated in the car park. I have not been in the medical field for long, 6 months at most, but have seen many people who come in for rehab after having a heart attack who ignore their fluid restriction. I've seen this turn into a fatal situation 3 times already. Drinking water to death, who would have thunk it? And that is where the saying everything in moderation comes from. Because yes, you can in fact drown yourself to death internally by drinking too much water, apparently. And no, don't worry, it would have to be just an insane amount of water, like, I don't know, 50 liters or something. Every opiate addict that refuses to go to the hospital after you give them naloxone to reverse their overdose, they regain consciousness and refuse transport, and we explain that the naloxone will wear off and they will be right where they started. They still refuse care. We get back in the rig, drive around the block, and wait for 911 to be called again. My own experience with doctors is that, because I hate every medical procedure, I just tell them that no painkillers, nothing. Dentists always start drilling and pulling right away. My tongue needed surgery, so they just cut it, and I took no painkillers. They told me that I might be the easiest patient ever. No need for painkillers, just do what you gotta do and we can get out fast. Actually, I have a minor, nowhere near death one myself. Needed to have an abdominal ultrasound, told not to use the bathroom for however long beforehand, but it was mid-morning and I woke up needing to go. I told myself I'd drink a bunch and I'd fill up again fast. Nope, had to sit in the waiting room for hours until I was full enough to be good. Not a doctor, but here's what happened to me. My mother is an anti-vaxxer and generally against medical intervention. I didn't get my vitamin K shot as a baby, and I've never been vaccinated for anything. At around 5, I was being an idiot kid and playing around with old bamboo sticks. I liked to dip them into this nasty bucket of water we had that had been rotting in the backyard forever and fling it around to see the droplets in the air. We later found out that a neighbor kid had used it as a toilet at least once. I came down with something horrible that probably almost killed me. Very, very high fever, lethargy, nausea, and little red spots covering my entire body. I don't remember much from that time, but I remember how awful it was. My parents assumed that it was chickenpox and decided not to take me to a doctor because it would strengthen my immune system. I was actually fine eventually, but it did definitely feel like I was going to die at the time. Fast forward to age 13, I actually got the chickenpox and luckily fairly mild, but this left the question of the mystery illness's identity. I've done some Googling and my best guess is typhoid, but I have no clue really. I'll be 18 soon, and I'll be getting vaccinated as soon as I can. I don't understand even at an early age what your fixation might have been with that apparent poop bucket. My dad is a veterinarian. My clinic calls them patients, their owner, clients. We had a dog come in with strychnine poisoning. You start convulsing and any stimulus, no matter how small, makes it worse. The very same convulsions cause a chain reaction and eventually spreads to every muscle in your body. You die from exhaustion, or when the neural pathways that control breathing stop working, and it is a painful way to die. We save this dog, miraculously. We tell the owner to put the poison somewhere where the dog can't get it. Dog comes back in later, same symptoms, same poisoning. We save it, somehow, again. Owner promises and swears it will be gone this time. Nope, third time is the charm. Dog is saved, yet again. At this point, the dog really isn't a dog anymore. Might as well be a potato at this point. It can barely move. Owner says that they can't lose the dog or bear to see it in pain. The poison will be disposed of. Yeah, no, the 4th iteration of the poisoning killed it. You saved it the first 3 times. Why was this time different? I feel really bad for that dog. A patient who had a spinal decompression and fusion procedure was recommended to continue using a walker when ambulating and also to arrange for personal assistance at home. Decided she was too good for help and a walker is for the disabled. Fell out of bed, a nail from the hardware punctured into the spinal nerve. She was readmitted to the hospital and is now paraplegic. From the initial need for a walker, the patient now needs to be assessed for a wheelchair. The patient didn't die, but nevertheless, a severe consequence. I don't know why this kind of reminds me of how I was taking the pictures off the wall on a narrow stairway when we were moving furniture, and they were like, "Why are you taking the pictures off the walls?" And I was like, "Because I'm being careful. I don't want us to hit them and for them to fall down." And they were like, "No, don't worry, we'll be careful." It's like, no, you don't understand. Me being careful is taking the pictures off the wall. Man, though, that is some unfortunate luck, and I feel really awful for that patient. Like, that is just a result of hubris. Patient with one leg, instructed not to get up without assistance. Bed alarm in place. Bed alarm sounded. We run in there just in time to see him up. He says, "I wanted to see if I could walk without my prosthesis." So basically, he tried to walk with one leg. Didn't work. Not me, but my dad is a cardiac nurse. This is probably my favorite story from him, and yes, I feel awful saying that. Anyways, you know how smoking is bad for your lungs? It's also really bad for your heart. It causes buildup in your arteries that can cause heart attacks or strokes. My dad performs surgeries on way too many smokers and sees some of them repeatedly. My dad, the other nurses, and every doctor will tell them they will be back if they don't quit smoking. But, of course, they don't. Now, for the part that is actually why it's my favorite. My dad is obese and has never denied it. One time, while having the stop smoking talk with a patient, he got super offended and told my dad that being obese was bad for his heart and blah blah. My dad's response, "I can lose weight. You can't lose stupid." Guy got stabbed in the arm with a knife, refused a tetanus shot, came back with full-blown tetanus, arching his back, clenching his jaw, straight to the ICU. Had a patient who had just gotten a below-knee amputation. We gave him the prosthesis shortly after surgery, as soon as surgeons signed off, and told him several times to take it easy. He was very excited and we knew he was not going to listen. To stress the issue, we had the owner of the company and several co-workers who are also amputees talk to the patient. Being a new amputee, the limb goes through a lot of changes and is still healing. After he took his new leg home, we hadn't heard from him in a few weeks. He even cancelled his follow-up appointment since he was doing great. A week after that, one of our co-workers calls us and tells us that he was at the surgeon's office, just stopping by to say hi and bring them breakfast, and saw said patient waiting to be seen since his limb was scabbed over, with several lesions and extremely discolored. After asking what happened, he told her that he was feeling so good with the prosthesis, he decided to run a marathon and Tough Mudder. He ended up getting a major infection due to the mud and is extremely lucky that he did not need a revision, making him an above-knee amputee. For anyone who doesn't know what Tough Mudder is, I don't know if it's a UK thing exclusively, but it's basically a mud run. That's it, really. It's just lots and lots of mud. The patient was me and the medical professional was my aunt in this situation. Isn't blood related to me, but she's basically family. I can't remember the actual medical term for it, but I call it deadly asthma. This happened last year, which makes it the second time I've had it. First time I had to go to the ER at Boston Children's because no one could figure out what was wrong with me and I was getting increasingly worse. Basically, the symptoms are close to the symptoms of walking pneumonia. This time that I got it, I was told to take my neb treatment 3 times a day and take some heavy meds. Now, I have had asthma my entire life. I tend to not take my rescue inhaler if I feel like I can get through an attack. I get 2 to 5 attacks a day, so yeah, I'm pretty severe. I take Symbicort, but had basically lost my inhaler and never really looked for it, so I stopped taking it. It pretty much allows me to not even have a single attack every day, which is awesome. Being a teenager, I am kinda irresponsible with my own well-being, so I stupidly didn't do what I was told. I ended up not taking the nebs because they make me sick, make my tremors worse, and make me unable to walk normally for a couple of hours. Well, let's just say at night I was suffocating and close to just not breathing at all, but still said I'm fine, which more or less was because I was delirious. I was driven to my pediatrician's office and they put me on the neb. They said I could have crashed, medical term, not car crash, and died if my mom waited to drive me there. My oxygen levels were low and I was about to pass out because I couldn't breathe. My aunt gave me a good scolding, told me she'd send me to the ER if I didn't take my neb treatment, so I followed her orders that time. Took me another 2 to 3 weeks to fully recover and had to be put on even more meds. I think sometimes I underestimate the dangers of my condition because I go through it so much. Let this all be a lesson to, not do that again. In this story, it wasn't the patient that ignored the warning, but the hospital staff. This isn't my story, but a story from my professor that ultimately led to him stop practicing and start teaching. My professor has a heart of gold, just the most genuine man you could ever meet. He works in an adolescent psych ward. Well, one kid comes through and they really bond. He spoke about him with such a big smile. You can tell he really cared for him. He loved this kid, but he notices something is off. He speaks with the staff on the unit and asks them to make sure he is on self-deletion watch. His gut is telling him the kid is planning something. Well, he was right. The staff didn't check in at all until the next morning. The kid had managed to delete himself. It just completely broke my poor professor, shattered him personally and professionally. It's such a terrible story to hear because it was so preventable, but no one else decided to care. As for me, well, I've had patients completely ruin surgeries from just not listening. One guy got a spinal fusion surgery. Very painful. One thing you can't do is twist your back, so I'm still really new, bright-eyed and hopeful, and I go see this patient. I introduce myself and ask him how he is. He tells me that he's in 10 out of 10 pain sometimes and he can't figure out why. I try to be helpful, ask him what he's doing when he's in pain. Well, instead of just telling me, he frickin' shows me, grabs the bed rails and twists like he was trying to snap his spine. He's screaming and I'm horrified and kind of yelling at him to stop. We get the situation under control. I go back and explain all of his precautions again. He tells me to go screw myself. If he's in pain, I'm not doing my job. Well, he was discharged AMA and he ended up ruining his surgery. Hope he enjoys his excruciating back pain. That's really sad about the kid, but weirdly enough, I actually met someone the other day who said they had a fused spine. Be me, ER doctor. Sir, there is a large tumor in your spine pushing on your cord. That's why you can barely move. I've already spoken to our spine surgeon. You're going to go directly to the OR. Patient says, I'm a tough son of a gun and I don't need no surgery. 30 minutes of me screaming at him later. For the love of God, I promise I know what I'm talking about. If you don't get surgery, you will be a quad. The patient simply retorts, screw you, I'm going home. Patient became a quad. Wife sent me a very long apology letter. Be me again, sir. One of your cardiac enzymes has come back elevated. I think you are having a heart attack. I've already spoken with the cardiologist and we are going to get you over to the cath lab now. The patient's response?
Bro, I'm in town for Comic-Con and I am not missing it. I'll come back if it gets worse.
30 minutes of me screaming at him. For the love of God, I know what I'm talking about. Pretty please with frickin' sugar on top. Stay! The patient uncaringly replies,
Gotta get to the con. My favorite artist is on at 4.
Dude came back in cardiac arrest. Much of my job is to mess up Darwinian evolution. Weirdly enough, I have also thought about that in terms of doctors and how, like, you know, people with genuine hereditary issues are, like, the most in need of them. And that has got me thinking about the friend that told me that every single male in his family line has, like, had a heart attack around their 30s. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories. And if you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Linked in the description below.